The lure of the bright city lights are appealing.
She was eager to start college.
She was definitely going places.
But her dreams wouldn't get far.
They told us that she had been shot.
I was shocked. I didn't believe it.
I just fell out onto the ground.
It hurts, man. That's our only daughter.
Was she a random victim of urban violence?
It was maybe a drive-by shooting or something along those lines.
The city does have a gang problem.
Was the big city simply more than she could handle?
She was naive in a sense.
There can be this sort of adrenaline rush.
Or did this small-town girl have secrets?
Well, what happens when the good girl meets the bad boy? She was gonna end up in jail or hurt really bad.
You ain't gonna shoot?
Mississippi, a town of 50,000 that's about as close as Southeast Mississippi comes to a big city.
Hattiesburg is actually the 5th largest city in the state.
Life in Mississippi is pretty similar to like other rural southern states. People are very family oriented.
People know everybody. In some of these small towns, you can leave your doors unlocked. Leave your windows open.
But Hattiesburg isn't like most of rural Mississippi. And a little before noon that Sunday, 27-year-old Tracy Bullock makes a panicked call to Lamar County 911.
Hello? 911, what's your emergency?
Yes, my
Tracy stated that his girlfriend was shot.
Where is she shot?
She got shot in the head.
He said that they need to hurry up because she needed attention.
I'll send first responders to you now.
When a call comes into 911, there's a shooting or a robbery or something that's happening right then and there, it becomes a code 1, a priority. So they try to get officers there as fast as they can.
But will they get there in time to save 19-year-old Davisha Harris?
Hurry, please, hurry, she's bleeding. Davisha!
Before moving to Hattiesburg, Davisha Harris spent most of her life in tiny Gloucester, Mississippi. Population, 897.
The town has got like 8, 9 stop signs and no red lights.
We have just one grocery store. We have maybe 3 gas stations, and that's it.
The third of 4 children, Davisha was the only daughter.
All of them spoiled, but Davisha was the spoilest, I do believe. She would probably get maybe more gifts than the other kids. Her mother, Tasha, my wife, always say it's daddy's girl. Yeah, that's daddy's girl, but when it come down to my wife, anywhere my wife went, she was right along with her. Or she was gonna fall out crying because she couldn't go.
Davisha and I, we were very close. Pretty much we could talk about anything. She could come to me with anything.
She was always a happy-go-lucky young lady. Just beautiful inside and out.
And nearly everyone in their tiny town agreed.
She was very popular among her peers. Even adults knew Davisha in the community. She knew the grandmother, she knew the mother, she knew the cousins, even the out-of-town relatives. People that we didn't even know existed, Davisha knew them.
Davisha was the type of person, you go down the road, she allowed to let the window down and open the car door. Hey, Lucy! That's the type of person she was, all over town.
She was a person that saw the beauty in everyone.
But what Davisha enjoyed most was making others laugh.
She was the jokester of the family, life of the party. She actually won class clown in her senior year.
You can't even get mad at her because as soon as you look at her, I bust out laughing. That was our relationship.
But despite her vibrant personality, Davisha was anything but worldly.
Davisha's parents sheltered her in a lot of ways.
Davisha rarely went anywhere. If she did, it was usually with me. She got a little older, we gave her a little room, but it wasn't very much.
She was not allowed to date while in high school.
Which may explain why after graduation, Davisha couldn't wait to go out on her own.
She was supposed to leave in August to go to community college here in Hattiesburg, but she came to me and her dad actually maybe 2 days after she graduated and said she wanted to go to summer school. Then she graduated May the 20th, and she left on May the 31st from home to Hattiesburg.
And once she was in the big city of Hattiesburg, there was no looking back.
Gloucester is like 900 people compared to 50,000 people in a town like Hattiesburg. For people like Davisha, who grow up in small towns like that, the lure of the bright city lights are appealing.
She was a small town girl looking to start her life as an independent adult just to see what the big city has to offer.
Davisha quickly came into her own.
She enjoyed going to college and working at a call center. She did well in both. She was a productive citizen. She was.
She also had big plans for her future.
Her mom is a nurse, so she always talked about being a nurse, following in her mom's footsteps.
She was planning on transferring into the nursing program.
She was definitely going places.
And she wasn't going alone. By the time she started her second year in college, she'd met Tracy Bullock.
It was her first serious romantic relationship.
She actually met him through a friend she met while attending college.
He was older and wasn't a student.
So what you going to school for?
I want to be a nurse like my mom.
He was very charismatic, charming.
And he was more than happy to show Davisha around town.
That was a sense of relief, like I'm not going through this alone. I find this guy that I've connected with and can kind of navigate life with, and that made her happy.
But no amount of guidance could steer Davisha clear of danger.
Hey, wake up. Hello?
In a frantic call to 911, Tracy said Davisha's been shot.
Hurry, please, hurry, she's bleeding.
First responders race to the scene. But there's little they can do for Davisha.
Police! Police! Help her! Come your hand!
They found the victim with a apparent gunshot wound to the head.
When they checked her vitals, Davisha was already dead.
She's gone.
That's a tragedy, tragedy.
And according to Tracy, it was completely random.
He said a bee helper was driving through and actually shot up the apartment.
They was just shooting up the place.
He was saying that it could have potentially been gang violence.
Start college and get a job, and she did both when she moved here to Hattiesburg.
She also entered her first serious relationship with 27-year-old Tracy Bullock.
That was a lot of new transitions for a young person. And so to have someone that was older, much more experienced, made her happy.
But on October 15th, 2017, her young life, so full of promise, would end in tragedy.
Lamar County Sheriff Office received a call from 911.
Yes, my girlfriend just
Tracy called to say that Davisha had just been shot.
Hurry, please, hurry, she's bleeding.
By the time police arrived, she was already dead.
She's gone.
News of Davisha's murder quickly reaches her family.
My son called and said that her neighbor had messaged him through Facebook and told him that Davisha had been shot. And by the time I got up, he was calling right back and saying she was gone. She was dead. And at that point, I just fell out onto the ground.
While Davisha's family rushes to the apartment for answers, homicide detectives arrive at the scene and start to piece together what happened.
They had the victim, who of course suffered from an apparent gunshot wound, so they know the firearm was involved, but there was none at the scene. That makes it a little more difficult because you want to have that murder weapon.
They do locate Davisha's cell phone, however.
The phone was protected by a passcode.
They bagged and sent it to the crime lab so they could hopefully gain access to whatever was in the phone.
Sometimes that takes a little while to break into it.
Then, once their brief survey of the scene is complete, detectives turn to Davisha's boyfriend, Tracy, who was waiting outside the apartment.
He had been waiting in the back of the squad car ever since the first officers arrived on the scene.
As the detective, the first thing you want to do is talk to witnesses.
They told me she was dead.
I'm sorry, sir. You want to tell us what happened?
Yes, I saw the whole thing.
He said he heard tires squeal, and when he looked out the window, he saw a car coming down the street.
The passenger window rolled down, but I didn't see a gun.
However, according to Tracy, he did hear the shots.
Somebody was doing a drive-by shooting.
Could you see who was in the vehicle?
No. I didn't see anybody.
Your license plate number.
No. Soon as they started shooting, I hit the floor.
For detectives, it sounds like an all too familiar scenario.
Despite being a city of less than 50,000, Hattiesburg does have a gang problem.
It's kind of the central location between Mobile, Jackson, and New Orleans.
A lot of the drug trafficking between those larger cities passes through Hattiesburg.
But if this was a drive-by, who was the intended target?
Davisha was not one to be known for running around with gangs or any kind of criminal behavior.
She was a good girl, going to college.
Was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was she with the wrong person?
While detectives were talking to Tracy, officers ran a search on his name in police records.
In doing interviews with witnesses, it's common to want to check their background just to see who you're talking to.
When the officer enters his name into the computer, something pops.
He was wanted on a warrant in Macomb, from where he originally from.
They were looking for him anyway.
Hey, detectives.
You aware you got a warrant out for your arrest? Put your hands behind your back. What you doing?
He was arrested on the scene for violation of probation.
Detectives figured it was a way to keep tabs on him until they fully understood his involvement in the shooting.
The squad car carrying Tracy into custody has barely pulled away when Davisha's parents arrive on the scene.
Where's my baby?
He was gone by the time we got there. And I tried to make my way into the apartment to see my daughter, but they wouldn't let me.
They stopped us. They didn't want us to go in the apartment.
You try to be compassionate and explain to them that you're going to do everything that you can, and hopefully you can get to some answers at the end of the day, but it's still tough.
Once I figured out how bad it was, I'm glad I didn't. I didn't want to see my daughter like that, the situation where it was.
I want to remember like she was, you know.
At the scene, detectives try to interview Davisha's parents, but they're too distraught for a formal statement.
Emotionally, it was tough because that's our only daughter.
No parents expect to outlive your children. No one expects to have to bury their child.
But when Davisha's oldest brother arrives at the apartment, he agrees to speak with police.
Where's Tracy?
The first thing he asked is, where's Tracy?
We have him in custody.
They had arrested Tracy at that time under other charges, though.
She'll be trying to for murder.
Why is that?
He was not too fond of Tracy.
In fact, Davisha's brother said he'd had a tense encounter with Tracy just a few weeks earlier.
I wish he'd have whooped his ass.
Gating her murder, that he wouldn't be surprised if her boyfriend, Tracy Bullock, had something to do with it.
At this point, police already had Tracy in custody, but that arrest had nothing to do with the murder investigation.
He was arrested for a warrant that he had out.
However, detectives suspect Tracy may have been the true target of Davisha's killer.
She died in what Tracy described as a drive-by shooting.
Why do you think he's involved?
The guy's bad news.
Although, according to Davisha's brother, he'd only met Tracy once.
It was just 2 weeks before the murder.
He had a cell phone charger that Davisha wanted to borrow.
He lives in Hattiesburg as well, and he was going to take her charger.
He just went to her home just to see if she was there to drop it off.
That's when Davisha's brother noticed their mother's car in the parking lot.
She had borrowed my car because we had to change a flat out on her car.
She'd gotten a flat while she was back home in Gloucester over the weekend.
Being such a small town, there wasn't no repair shop there to take care of it, so we just switched cars to let her come back to Hattiesburg, come to school and work.
But when her brother noticed someone was smoking in the car, he was furious.
He's wondering what's going on when he saw this stranger sitting in his mother's car smoking marijuana.
He was sitting in the car smoking dope, chilling with the air on like he owned it.
My oldest son, he actually recorded, sitting in the car with the windows up and stuff. And he sent us a picture back to tell us what the guy was doing in the car, and he wasn't pleased with it.
Oh! What are you doing?
So Davisha's brother confronted Tracy.
Not that he knew who Tracy was at the time.
No one in the family knew about the relationship.
None of us had met him officially, so we didn't know his name, He opened the door and asked him to get out the car and asked him what was he doing, smoking marijuana and music up loud, blasting.
Who the hell are you? This is my mom's car. Well, you best to get the running to her.
When we got him out of it, the dude still was kind of disrespectful.
He got out of the car and proclaimed that it was his girlfriend's car. He can do whatever he wants to do.
That's how we found out who he was.
I don't care who you are. Don't be smoking in my mom's car. You gonna make me?
He and my oldest son did have some words.
Tracy, it's okay. It's okay. It's my word.
In the midst of those words, Davisha came and got in between them.
I don't know. She didn't want to see his brother go to jail or was in love with this fool. I don't know.
Davisha's brother says he'd let it go.
I guess since he's my sister's boyfriend, he kind of had permission.
Before he left, he did have a word with his sister.
That brother was like, sister, are you sure this is what you want?
The behavior that my son has saw that wasn't acceptable to any of us,
He was smoking weed and, doing the things that they didn't care to be around.
I'm not a baby anymore.
I know.
I can look after myself. Go inside.
Davisha felt like that he just didn't want her with anybody, but that wasn't the case, in that scenario. That wasn't the case. It was what he was doing.
So that's why you think he had something to do with it?
Yeah.
It was just a hunch.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, something ain't right.
Detectives don't entirely disagree, but their suspicion of Tracy is based on something more concrete than him smoking marijuana or being disrespectful to Davisha's brother.
Despite Tracy's claim that Davisha was killed in a drive-by, there was no evidence to support that.
There were no bullet holes, no shell casings. Not a single one.
It didn't make any sense.
He didn't even try to even come up with a plausible lie.
Death wasn't due to a drive-by shooting, as her boyfriend Tracy Bullock claimed.
There were no bullet holes in the couple's apartment building.
Detectives couldn't find any shell casings in the street either.
When they canvassed the neighbors, none of them said anything about a car driving through and shooting things up.
The evidence don't support there was any kind of drive-by.
Which means that Tracy has some explaining to do.
From the crime scene, detectives head back to the county jail, where Tracy is waiting in a holding cell.
Detectives had already taken him into custody for an outstanding warrant.
When confronted with the inconsistencies between his drive-by story and the conditions at the crime scene, Tracy admits that he'd lied.
Okay, man, it wasn't a drive-by shooting. It wasn't, okay?
Well, why'd you say it was?
Because I know how y'all work.
He didn't tell the truth because he had this distrust for the police.
Mississippi has its fair share of challenges as it relates to racial issues around policing.
Okay, so who shot her then?
I don't know.
Tracy says that instead of a drive-by, it had all started with a knock at their door.
You expecting somebody?
No.
He said that when he opened the door, there was a man on their doorstep with a gun.
Tracy said he ducked and slammed the door.
And the shooter didn't try to come in?
No. He must have ran off.
The way Tracy told the story, it sounded like someone tried to put a hit out on him.
But according to Tracy, the would-be hitman missed their target.
Davisa! Oh my God.
But you don't know who the shooter was.
Dude had a hoodie on.
Detectives aren't sure if he's lying about the shooter's identity.
Given his criminal record, there may be a connection that Tracy doesn't want the detectives digging into.
Or is it simply his drive-by shooting story all over again?
The passenger window rolled down, but I didn't see a gun.
The police catch him in the lie. His story changes. Okay, somebody came to the door, knocked on the door, and he was shooting at me, but it was nothing to substantiate that.
The next day, when detectives finally sit down with Davisha's parents, they have no doubt that Tracy is lying about the mysterious hitman.
They saw the red flags. They had the concerns in the weeks, the months leading up to her death. And so for them, it was like, no, we know who is responsible.
So, what sort of red flags?
Well, first of all, her finances, for one thing.
When she get paid on Fridays, she'll provide everything she needed up to the time for her to get paid again. But we noticed where she would come home on Fridays, she wouldn't have money to get back to Hattiesburg on Sunday.
Me taking food out, I'll freeze the refrigerator, take it back. Like, I mean, you working, why you need all this here?
She didn't respond at all, She didn't have anything much to say.
But the answer became clear a couple of weeks before the homicide.
That's when Davisha's brother found out she had a boyfriend.
We still didn't know his name at that point, but he was sitting in my car, smoking marijuana with the windows up, with the music on loud.
It didn't give her parents a good impression of Tracy.
They got to figure that, he was using her.
She started saying, I want you to meet him, and that's when I started questioning her about who is he, where does he work? And when she gave me those answers, I told her I wouldn't be interested in it because he was much older than she was and he didn't have a job, so I'm not interested.
Just meet him. I know you'll like him. I don't think so.
Mom! He didn't fit the standards of what we had raised her for, and what we had raised her around and what her dad showed her what a man was supposed to be. That's what I told her up front.
I told her, Davisha, I don't like him. I don't like what he's doing.
There wasn't the kind of boyfriend that she would want to get involved with. There was going to be one or two things, trouble where she was going to end up in jail with him, by being caught by the police or being hurt really bad.
Mom, I knew you would say that.
I think she knew I wasn't going to be pleased with it.
It may have also been what attracted Davisha to a bad boy like Tracy in the first place.
She was naive in a sense because we had sheltered her so much. She hadn't been introduced to any of those things.
Young ladies that have been somewhat sheltered for so long, when they get a taste of freedom, that appeal of being with someone that I know my parents would not necessarily approve of can be very captivating. And so there can be this sort of adrenaline rush, or there can be this sort of thrill, whether it's the healthiest decision or not.
But while her parents didn't approve of Tracy, they tell detectives they didn't push Davisha to end the relationship.
I knew if I'd have stayed and harped on the situation, it was just going to push her closer to him. So I was trying to give her the time to see what was going on, wake up to what was going on.
Despite that, as her father predicted, Davisha had continued to see Tracy.
I think it strengthened their relationship at the time, and it actually became a us against them. I think that was the turning point in why he felt so comfortable with some of the behaviors that he demonstrated thereafter, because he had psychological control and emotional control over her at that point.
And now that Davisha is dead, her parents are convinced that they'd been right about Tracy.
Those parents did, I'm sure, what they thought was best at the time. Again, there were red flags.
I was considering death by somebody else hurting her, being caught up in crossfire with him some kind of way, It never came to me as him actually killing her.
But now you think he did.
Yes.
But why would he do that?
Because she finally came to her senses. She wanted to leave him.
I believe she told him that his honey hole is dried up. It's time for him to go.
They think Bullock was not willing to accept rejection, and he took things to the extreme.
I think that's exactly what happened. I go to the grave with that.
It's a compelling theory. Only there's one problem.
There was no evidence that Tracy had been violent or threatening toward Davisha.
But that all changes when the crime lab finally cracks the passcode on Davisha's phone.
She had everything in her phone with the ARG and everything else that was going on.
Hey, come here.
It's an indication that she knew that this was an issue. She knew that, like, this is an unsafe situation.
Look at this.
Because one video taken less than 48 hours before the murder showed Tracy with a gun.
It was Friday night, pointing it toward her, you know.
You ain't gonna shoot?
Bullock on Davisha's phone.
They found a video with Mr. Bullock pointing a gun at the victim.
Davisha had recorded the video less than 48 hours before her murder.
This absolutely demonstrates someone who was incredibly reckless, careless, impulsive, and honestly had no regard for Davisha's life. Even if the intent in that moment was not to pull the trigger, to put the gun in her face, that was an act to intimidate, an act to really incite fear.
But does that mean he'd eventually follow through on his threat?
Davisha's parents believe Tracy killed her because she told him she was going to leave him.
I believe she actually woke up and seen the light. She stepped to him and told him it was over, get, gone, where you gonna go or whatever.
When someone decides to leave an abusive relationship, that's when things are most dangerous.
For many abusers, experiencing that sense of lack of control can feel incredibly threatening for them. And that's when we see like the lashing out. That's when we see the very impulsive behaviors, things becoming physical, things becoming violent and aggressive.
Did that explain why Davisha recorded the incident?
She could have been thinking about needing evidence or documentation for a potential restraining order. Like if she had made up in her mind that this is it, I have to end this relationship. She could have been thinking very future focused. I'm going to have to put some things in place legally to protect myself. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about the fact that she had video.
Was it too little too late? For the moment, detectives are still far from proving it.
The case against Tracy was entirely circumstantial.
But it does get stronger when detectives receive the results of Davisha's autopsy and confirm the cause of death.
According to the medical examiner, it was a close contact wound to the head.
There's some stippling around the wound.
Stippling is where unburnt powder strikes the skin around the gunshot wound.
That tells them that it was up close and personal.
Which isn't how Tracy described the shooting in his second statement.
He said Davisha was some distance behind him when he ducked out of the would-be assassin's way.
After the autopsy was done, all of those things just proved to be untrue.
Most important for investigators, the autopsy also recovers the bullet that killed Davisha.
If they can find a weapon, they can use that ballistic evidence to match it back to that gun.
The caliber of the bullet appeared to be from the same gun that Tracy had in the video, but without ballistics testing, detectives couldn't prove it was the same gun.
They can solve this case possibly with the circumstantial evidence that they have, but there's nothing like cold hard evidence, that smoking gun. So that's what they need to find.
Until they do, all Davisha's family can do is wait and gather to say goodbye.
The homegoing celebration, it was more people there that I'd never seen before in my life. I mean, the church was full.
I think our church at that time held like 400 or 500. It was full. Had chairs down the aisle.
There was not a seat vacant for anybody. Like, it was a full house. There were people in the aisles. There were people standing up in the back of the church.
And that just showed me that she was well loved and well respected. You know, only 19 years old, they have all these type of people showing up.
The outpouring of love for Davisha is little solace, knowing that the man they believe is her killer is yet to be charged with murder.
The amount of frustration and just pain and anger that they felt in that moment, I'm sure, was unbearable. It's like, no, this is the person who did this, a person who needs to be held accountable, like he's right here.
The guy took her life. The videos are self-explanatory.
You could actually see where he had the gun that Friday night.
But where was the gun now? Detectives are at a loss for where to begin their search.
At this point in the investigation, the detectives, they don't have that smoking gun. That's a key piece of evidence that's missing.
Fortunately, detectives won't have to search hard to find it.
All this time, Tracy was still in jail for the probation violation.
And that could prove his undoing after a cellmate of Tracy's at the Lamar County Jail reaches out to the detectives.
It's not uncommon for that to happen, and sometimes we just have good luck.
The informant said that while they shared a cell, Tracy had talked about Davisha's murder.
He was telling me about how he killed this girl.
He gives them a lot of information about the case, and some of the information is information only the person that did the murder would know.
Including what Tracy had done with the murder weapon.
He told me where he hid it.
To him all about how he'd killed his girlfriend, Davisha Harris.
He's in jail, telling his cellmate what he did and what he did with the murder weapon.
And this other inmate decided to talk to investigators and give them information. And the reason why he would want to do that is to possibly get some time off his own sentence.
It's a huge break in the case, if it's the truth.
Following up on the tip, detectives searched where the informant said Tracy had disposed of the gun.
And he gave the exact location where the gun would be.
It appeared to be a match for the gun Tracy had in Davisha's cell phone video.
But is it really the murder weapon?
When the crime lab compared the gun with the bullet recovered during Davisha's autopsy, it was a match.
It's news Davisha's family has been waiting to hear.
The investigators actually called us and told us they had found the weapon. They knew that he killed Davisha, so it was going to actually be murder.
As a detective, the best thing about this job is being able to come to them and give them that closure.
That sense of closure proved short-lived, however.
The prosecutor felt like the case wasn't strong enough for a murder conviction.
Rather than pursue murder charges, they offered Tracy the opportunity to plead to manslaughter.
Manslaughter is something that happened in the heat of the moment. It could be an argument, an altercation, which caused the suspect to kill the victim.
In other words, if you were in the heat of passion, again, just based on human being, human nature, you're not in your right mind.
Tracy takes the deal, admitting that he shot Davisha in the middle of an argument.
I'm done. You need to leave.
For what?
I'm done. I'm done with this and I'm done with you.
I ain't going nowhere.
Oh, okay. Big man with a gun.
Oh, you don't think I'd do it?
I know you won't.
He was someone that was spiraling. He was rapidly unraveling.
For Davisha's family, Tracy's plea deal is a slap in the face.
A lot of emotions was tied up. Anger, disappointment, just pain, you know. It was just unrealistic pain. It was like just almost living that heartache over again, that initial heartache.
When your loved one has been in a situation where they've had that person brandish a gun, threaten them, when there's video footage to show it, It's kind of difficult to accept that he was just angry or jealous in the moment.
You took her life. And to me, in my opinion, it was premeditated.
At Tracy's sentencing hearing, Davisha's family makes it clear they consider the plea deal a travesty of justice.
They would read the impact statement to him of how we actually felt about it, about this whole situation. And he was just a little punk ass, too scared to even turn his head and look and listen. I told him, won't you turn your head and look at me while I'm talking to you, mother. But he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
He was sitting there shaking his dreads and kind of laughing at us, smiling at us, like, I beat this case, like, I've got over on y'all. Y'all not getting what y'all thought y'all was gonna get. You know what I'm saying? Because we will always think justice will be revealed.
Will a father's impassioned statement and Tracy's apparent contempt for the process have an impact on the judge?
The judge himself, he asked the DA 3 times, is this all you charge this man with all the evidence I see here? He asked the DA 3 times. The DA said yes.
And in the end, the judge honors the terms of the plea and sentences Tracy to 15 years.
He was let off lightly, and it was not fair. I was very angry when I heard about it.
I have nothing for the legal system now. It's just, they just let us down. It's like we didn't matter to them, that she didn't matter, and she does matter.
We're talking about a 19-year-old young lady who had her entire life ahead of her, who was just starting to really establish herself, really starting to understand what it even means to be independent and to be an adult, and to have her life senselessly taken away from her. I don't think she nor her family received justice.
He still gets to get out, create a family, and just live his life, and she wasn't able to do that.
The Harris family is going to be affected forever and ever.
I'm coping, day by day I'm coping, but you never forget it.
Although Davisha's parents do hope that her story will allow others to avoid a similar fate.
Someone starts to physically abuse you, verbally abuse you emotionally, you need to get out the relationship as fast as you can. Tell somebody.
When you see these red flags, when you see these warning signs, take them to heart.
Let somebody know, if it's not your parents or your siblings, somebody you respect that's older. Let them know so this situation won't happen again.
But they also see Davisha's story as a cautionary tale for parents.
Teach your child to always be mindful of the company they keep or the individual they want to date.
Her being naive played a part, not realizing what she was stepping into, the danger what she was stepping into.
Because what you lose can be more than any family can bear.
She's a sweet person. It's truly missed. Truly missed by all.
She wasn't here for a long time, but she definitely left her mark.
And later, in Dayton, Ohio, after a series of run-ins with the law, Tonisha Harris turns over a new leaf to provide for her family.
She was working so hard as a single parent, she really didn't have time for love.
That is, until a new man enters her life, and he asks her to help clean up his dirty deeds.
She fell to the ground and was dead almost immediately.
She had never gone this far, but he was willing to take her over the edge.
A child of the state in Pensacola, Florida, Kaisha Pugh has little contact with her parents.
She really didn't have a lot of guidance because her mother was not really there, so she really had a lot of disadvantages growing up.
They placed her into foster care, so she was kind of like lost, and she didn't know really what really happened until she felt like she did something wrong.
It's really easy for kids' abandonment issues to put them at risk for situations that are abusive.
In fact, the young girl's problems follow her all the way through her teen years.
She was required to attend an alternative school for those individuals with learning challenges.
Kaisha makes the most of it under the circumstances and tries to have as normal a high school life as possible.
She went to the prom and she went to a couple dances. She graduated.
After she turns 18, the graduate departs foster care and she reconnects with her mother.
She was very happy. She thought that this would be an opportunity where she could foster the relationship with her mother that she wanted, and even took it to the point where they moved in together.
I believe her mother had took some classes and stuff with parenting and had improved, and she started making better decisions for her when she returned home.
But the newfound stability doesn't keep her from getting into hot water.
Kaisha got involved in shoplifting, for which she was subsequently arrested.
Lucky for the first-time offender, the judge shows leniency. After being charged with petty theft, her case is dismissed when she successfully completes an anti-shoplifting course.
She was required to attend on-the-job training, which gave her the opportunity to develop some work skills to acclimate her to the workforce.
You're able to work part-time, and she was at a thrift store, and she gained responsibility.
Her co-workers soon learn that Kaisha is very trusting and quick to follow anyone that shows her the slightest kindness, especially men.
I don't believe she had a lot of luck with men because she dated late, and I think that anyone that showed her attention, she fell for.
Kids who grow up without any strong emotional bonds often feel that they don't belong, and so they'll latch on to any person or any situation, no matter how appropriate or inappropriate, in order to be able to develop feelings of love and acceptance.
Over the next few years, Kaisha shifts from one relationship to the next and ends up having 3 children from different men.
And she didn't really have a lot of support.
And then she started losing more and more confidence, and then she just started drifting.
It's really important for anyone, but in this particular case, mothers, to feel focused, because if they go down the wrong path or they feel down, they start to develop very negative and destructive habits.
Try as she might, the cycle repeats itself when she falls on hard times and her children are taken away from her, just like when she went into the system years ago.
She would say, well, I don't want to be like my mama. She said, I want to have my kids. I want to raise my kids. I want to be with my kids.
It's a tough blow to Kaisha, so she starts to clean up her act by attending church, so it looks good for the courts.
And she wanted to get a job.
When she was on the road to try to get her life back together, she fought diligently to try to get her children back.
But all of her plans get put on hold when she meets 26-year-old Anthony Presley.
Anthony and Kaisha met at the bus station, and she was happy because she wasn't in a relationship.
Oh, she fell for him very hard. His looks and charm and his streetwise ways were something that she did not know how to handle. And based on the fact that she was looking for that type of attention and affection, especially from a man.
Some late bloomers, when they get involved in relationships, may tend to either not recognize or be in denial about the warning signs, most likely because they just don't have the proper experience to be in a healthy relationship.
Turns out, Anthony's rap sheet goes back 10 years, and Kaisha doesn't seem to mind his less than stellar past. Soon, rumors of attempts to dominate and humiliate her make the rounds among her family and friends.
Even going so far as demanding her to strip naked in front of his friends as an exercise of his control.
Go on, strip.
And then he was like, you're nothing but a effing slut. She, was upset. And she cried, but he didn't care. And I'm like, it was just very disrespectful.
He didn't have no emotion feelings for her. And so that's the reason why he felt that she would do what he tell her to do.
Some women tend to see their guys or boyfriends controlling behaviors as being loving behaviors, but in fact it's the opposite of that, in that they're treated as objects instead of people and are often mistreated in that kind of a process.
Even though he did the thing that he did, she still trusted him and she still loved him. Couldn't tell her anything different.
Despite his questionable behavior, the two become an item, and Anthony introduces her to his cousin Gregory Williams and Gregory's new girlfriend, Melinda McCormick.
Gregory and Melinda had only been together a few months, and all four of them would enjoy each other's company and go over Melinda's house and hang out from time to time.
As Gregory and Melinda get to know each other better, he learns about a dark chapter in her life that is finally turning around.
Not too long before this, Linda suffered a car accident and she was expecting a large sum of money on her Social Security card.
Soon after, Anthony listens intently as his cousin spills the beans and a dark plot brews.
Well, they intended to beat Melinda and take her property and money.
Anthony wants Kaisha's help, and he's willing to tell her just about anything to get it.
I think they had the plan set, but then added Kaisha in as an assistant and just told her that they were getting the money that they owed from the lady.
But she has no idea what she's about to do will start a firestorm that will burn through countless lives.
This was a brutal and heinous crime, and a callous individual who has no concern for anyone else.
She did pretty much anything.
Plot cooked up by bad boy boyfriend Anthony Presley and his cousin Gregory Williams. Their mark? Gregory's unsuspecting girlfriend, Melinda McCormick, who's coming into a financial settlement.
Gregory was behind wanting to get the money, but since he knew so much about Melinda's life and where she hid the money and her routine.
Gregory informed Anthony as far as the layout of the house, the amount of money that he expected her to be receiving, where she normally keeps her credit cards and things of that nature, as well as her Social Security checks.
Kaisha agrees to help.
He would always tell her to do things and she would do it. So if he needed assistance, what right person will be there that's gonna do what you tell them to do?
They probably didn't even tell her their plan. They probably didn't let her know a lot of things. They just leaded her the way to go with them.
Just like some people can be blinded by greed, others can be blinded by love and not think clearly or know what it is that they really want. And that's why they'll go to very extreme measures in order to keep that relationship.
On the eve of Easter Sunday, the gang chooses their weapons in preparation for the impending attack.
The trio went to Gregory's mother's house where they armed themselves with a variety of blunt objects. Kaisha had a lead pipe, Anthony had a crowbar, and Gregory had an hammer.
Not only is she showing her devotion, but she's demonstrating that she's willing to just gamble away her future and her freedom.
Around midnight, they place the items in a duffel bag and head over to Melinda's. An unsuspecting Melinda has no idea what lies in wait outside her door.
She opened the door and let these friends in as usual. However, once she turned her back, Gregory pounced on her and began choking her out on the floor.
Next, Kaisha proves to Anthony just how down she is.
Kaisha stepped over her friend and began beating her in the head, prompting Melinda to cry out.
Relentless in their assault, the three take turns beating her, each with their respective tools.
The torture that she went through and the weapons that they used was very devastating.
Kaisha shows no restraint as she beats Melinda.
So therefore, if you're there, everybody participates, or else you're considered a weak link. So if she didn't participate and show that she was fully committed to this incident, she might have been the next victim herself.
She never been through that experience, with somebody beating somebody. I think she was more scared and in a state of shock.
Melinda suffers over 40 blows to her head, but still holds on for dear life.
This was probably the most horrifying thing that a person can imagine, being beaten to death. Over and over again, blows raining down on your head until you lose consciousness and all hope of any survival.
Once she is subdued, the three ransack the house, looking high and low for her Social Security benefits card and anything else of value they can get their hands on.
During the beating, I believe that they were going around the house looking for the items, looking for the CDs, DVDs, and trying to find the Social Security card.
She wasn't alone as being a father and being scared. She was doing what her man asked her to do.
The card is nowhere to be found. So they make the hasty decision to burn the place down.
I guess they made a decision that they was gonna kill her.
After ransacking her apartment, Anthony directed Kaisha to burn the sheets while he went around and set the house on fire while Gregory watched.
Once they get to the point of no return, they know that they've got to go through the entire plan or risk getting caught. And if one goes down, then they all go down.
In a matter of minutes, the flames consume everything in their path.
As the fire raged throughout the house, Kaisha grabbed the duffel bag with all the items they had stolen from Melinda, and the three of them left to Anthony's mother's house.
They beat her and they put her on fire and they left.
Inside, Melinda still clings to life.
Melinda's battered and broken body was left on the floor to burn up while the house was consumed in flames around her.
And later, in Dayton, Ohio, single mother of 3, Tanisha Harris, stands by her lover after he asks her to do the unthinkable.
There was blood everywhere, and she realized she had to clean it up, that it was a bloody mess.
Being the ride-or-die chick that she is, she immediately was going to come to the
McCormick's Pensacola apartment ablaze in a botched robbery attempt with her in it. They frantically destroy evidence that can tie them to the fiery scene.
They went to Anthony's mother's house and burned their clothes, except for the 2 camouflage jackets that the men were wearing. They disposed their shoes in a dumpster around the corner and did all of this so that they could possibly avoid detection by the police.
Caught in the moment of the crime or the behavior, they may overlook details that may come back to haunt them later on.
Back at Melinda's, a neighbor smells smoke coming out of the apartment and calls 911. The Escambia Fire Department is the first to arrive and makes a horrifying discovery. Melinda's torment had not ended with her beating.
They found the apartment engulfed in flames, and they were able to find Melinda's body inside and were able to make a determination that she was not dead at the time the fire was started.
Her death is ruled a homicide as investigators swiftly try to identify her killer.
The apartment complex had surveillance footage which showed, prior to the time of the fire being started, 3 individuals walking to her apartment. The surveillance footage also showed 3 individuals leaving that apartment.
They had on big coats, and it looks like somebody was hiding something in the coat, and they was walking real fast out of the property and was looking back.
The police check with neighbors who give them valuable leads as to who the 3 perpetrators are.
Based on their frequent visits to the neighborhood, they were easily identified as being visitors to Melinda's apartment, which made them persons of interest.
Safe at home, the couple sifts through their spoils.
They were able to come up with a few items of value, DVDs, CDs, jewelry, and effects of that nature, but they were not able to find Melinda's Social Security benefits card, which was the goal of the operation.
Kaisha was led by her heart, and so things just went out of control when they didn't get what they were looking for. Now they have little or nothing to show for the murder that they committed.
The next day, detectives catch a lucky break when a friend of Melinda's comes forward with some information of his own.
Melinda's ex-boyfriend was able to identify the 3 of them.
Investigators obtain a search warrant for Anthony's mother's house, where he lives, and inside they find the 2 camo jackets similar to what the perpetrators were wearing on surveillance video.
The camouflage jackets that had DNA on it that matched Melinda, therefore tying them to the crime.
In addition to the camo jackets, police also find 2 of the perps, Anthony and Gregory, and they bring them to the station for questioning. Very quickly, they implicate Kaisha as the 3rd attacker.
Many people have their come-to-Jesus moment in the interrogation room, and all kind of secrets and stories are told to keep themselves out of trouble.
Later that day, Kaisha's arrested at her mother's house without incident.
She was very scared and crying, and they took her in. Whenever she did get arrested, she told the truth of how it happened.
The days of standing by her man are over once she sits down on the interrogation chair and starts spilling the beans.
She said that she was there, and she described the materials that they hit her with, and she gave them step by step of what happened from the beginning to end.
I think at that point she was more scared of police than she was of Anthony. And as a result, she knew that the only way that she could save her life and possibly escape the death penalty was to come clean and give Anthony up.
It's enough for investigators to charge the 3 collaborators with first-degree murder and first-degree robbery.
Once the pressure of the authorities came down on these 3, they cracked like eggs and sang like birds.
Kaisha sees no other way than to try to save herself. She takes a deal and pleads no contest to second-degree murder and arson. She tells the court that she was afraid Anthony and Gregory would kill her and her family if she did not help them.
It was a threat thing with her, and she was scared.
Based on her tumultuous relationship with Anthony, she really didn't have an out.
I believe that she was afraid of him and of what he would do to her if she didn't participate.
At sentencing, the court shows no mercy, and Kaisha receives 2 concurrent 30-year sentences. Anthony Presley pleads no contest to second-degree murder and arson and receives a total sentence of 60 years. Gregory Williams tries his luck with a jury, and they unanimously find him guilty of first-degree murder. His arson charges are dropped, and he receives a life sentence. Keisha Pugh was hoping her love and devotion would keep her close to her man, but that relationship only went up in flames. Next, Tanisha Harris tries to prove she's her man's main squeeze by getting her hands dirty for love. In Dayton, Ohio, a young Tanisha has always pushed the boundaries set by the grandmother who raised her.
Tanisha's grandmother was very protective of her, and they were Jehovah's Witness. So that meant there were restrictions on what she could wear, what she could do, and she really didn't have a life outside of that house.
And the older she gets, the harder it is to rein her in.
She began to rebel against the principles that her grandmother taught her.
Rebel against her religion and began to turn into the good girl gone bad.
By the time she's an adult, she transitions from breaking curfew to breaking the law.
When she was 22 years old, she had been in trouble for forgery. She was wanted by police for stealing a car and also illegally handling a firearm.
When children grow up in a very strict household and they get that taste of freedom, they sometimes just go buck wild because it's really new to them.
Bad behavior and several bad relationships later, Tanisha finds herself alone and the mother of 3 young children. Now a single mom, she focuses on supporting her brood any legal way she can.
Tanisha had only a high school diploma, which limited a lot of the jobs that she can get.
She was trying to turn her life around and become a better example for her 3 kids. She wanted to make sure they had a better future.
She was a cashier, she worked as a housekeeper, and even an icer at a local bakery.
Part of being a parent is learning how to put the needs of your children before your own needs. Some parents learn to do this in time. Some, it takes them a very long time. And there are some who just never learn that most valuable lesson of parenting.
With all her hard work, Tanisha's life seems to be getting back on track. But without a partner to share the burden, she finds herself increasingly lonely.
As any single parent, you're going to be busy. And when you have 3 children, that takes up all of your time pretty much.
So when 26-year-old Antoine Anderson enters the picture, she believes she can finally have her cake and eat it too.
The day she met Antoine, things changed for her. She saw a kindred spirit in him. She was quite smitten with this young man.
They soon learn that their similar experiences give them a special bond.
Antoine had an unsavory past. He had some run-ins with the law, but so did Tanisha.
He had actually been arrested about 6 times for a myriad of crimes, resulting in convictions for felonious assault and robbery. His past only draws them closer. Together, these former outlaws will kick their wild child pasts into high gear.
He called Tanisha in a frenzy and has the audacity to ask her to help clean up the crime scene.
She was going to ride with him until the wheels fell.
26-year-old Antoine Anderson bond over their criminal past.
They really wanted to work hard at building a great future together.
Opposites attract is not the only rule of thumb when it comes to love. As a matter of fact, statistics show that people who come from the same backgrounds actually do better in relationships.
Tanisha can't believe her luck when she learns that Antoine is not only handsome and charming, but likes children.
Most men would actually be scared of dating someone with multiple kids, but not Antoine.
Here's a guy who's flirtatious, who's giving her the attention she wants, and he's not bothered by the fact that she has 3 kids.
He actually relished the time that he spent with the kids. He began to take on a fatherly figure role with them and tried to spend every moment he could with Tanisha and her family.
The lonely mom has finally found a love she hopes will last forever.
Antoine seemed like a perfect catch. Her kids loved him, she loved him, and it seemed like this was the guy.
He gave her the one thing she always wanted, which was family.
But there's still one thing that he can't give her: fidelity. And she's okay with that.
Tanisha was working multiple jobs. She had 3 kids that she had to tend to. And Antoine took this as an opportunity to spend time in the bed with the side chick.
When a woman has been craving attention for some time, they're often blinded to the fact that the person they are attracted to is really bad news.
The fact that she was willing to share him with another woman showed you how desperate she was for love.
Like Tanisha, 25-year-old Nichelle McKnight also finds herself attracted to Antoine's charismatic charms.
When Tanisha was at work, Antoine would see Nichelle.
Nichelle was an Air Force reservist and single mom to a 4-year-old son named Zayden. He became a master at splitting his time between the 2 women.
Still, at the end of the day, Antoine would always come home to Tanisha.
She was willing to put up with his infidelity as long as she remained his number 1.
When a man is involved in 2 relationships, quite often there is the main one, the one that we call in street vernacular, the main squeeze. And for Antoine, Tanisha was that person. That's the one who was not only primary, but the one he didn't want to lose.
And to keep his number 1 gal completely happy, Antoine gets an idea where they can both get something out of his extracurricular love life.
Nichelle had a pretty good income, and he started to capitalize off of it, to steal her bank accounts, to steal her credit cards, and to get all of that information so he could actually siphon through and get some money.
So one day, when she wasn't looking, he walked up to her purse and grabbed her debit card. Once he got the card, he immediately gave it to Tanisha.
Tanisha was not willing to push back because she was hard up for cash. She wanted money, and this was free money. And not only was it free, it was from his side chick.
The fact that Tanisha knew that she was the main squeeze and Nichelle had no clue that Tanisha was in the picture gave Tanisha a sense of power and yet another secret that she could share with Antoine.
She and Antoine go shopping at department stores throughout Dayton and also withdraw cash to shop to their heart's content. For 2 days, the couple lives the high life, but their free ride doesn't last long.
Nichelle started to notice that she didn't have as much money in her account. She called the bank several times and was trying to figure out what was going on.
She suspects her lover might have something to do with her dwindling funds and mentions it to him. Antoine plays dumb and denies knowing anything about it.
Nichelle pretty much dropped it. She was over it.
It's possible that she believed him, but most likely she just didn't want the confrontation and was just hoping that it would just play itself out and have perhaps some sort of a good resolve.
Nichelle claims to believe him, and the two make plans to do their laundry together later that evening, until Nichelle unexpectedly calls off the date.
They were texting, and she texted him back and said, never mind, she changed her mind.
Antoine allegedly becomes unhinged.
He became alarmed when she decides to abruptly change her plans.
Antoine got paranoid and thought that Nichelle suspected him and that she would go to the police.
Not wanting to take any chances on serving more time, he decides to take matters into his own hands.
Instead of telling Tanisha that he thinks they're about to get caught, Antoine actually decides to act very quickly.
Knowing Tanisha and the kids are out of town, Antoine invites Nichelle over to Tanisha's place, since Nichelle lives with her mother. Then, he puts the next part of his plan in motion. He texts Nichelle and insists that they spend the night together.
All right, see you in a bit.
Antoine drove to Nichelle's house and waited outside for her and her son to come out. He then drove them to Tanisha's house.
Police theorize that once they arrive, Antoine leads an unsuspecting Nichelle down to the basement.
Nichelle was thinking she was there to wash clothes. As Nichelle began to unload her laundry bag, that's when Antoine made his move.
Nichelle McKnight, after stealing and using her credit cards.
So Antoine picked up Nichelle and her son and brings them over to Tanisha's house.
Her back was turned to him as she was unloading the laundry.
According to theories of the crime, this is when Antoine takes the opportunity to silence Nichelle for good.
He shot her twice in the back of the head, and she was dead instantly.
No one knows for certain what happened to Nichelle's young son, Zayden. Forensic reports suggest he met a similar fate in Tanisha's basement.
We're not sure what Antoine's involvement was in Zayden's disappearance or death, but if he did do something, then I think this really speaks more than anything to this pathological type of personality. Because the bottom line is, it was an innocent child, and he didn't have to include this child in such a ghastly, horrific crime.
Antoine then goes to work, getting rid of the evidence.
He threw Nichelle's body into some trash bags, hauled it into the trunk of Tanisha's car, and then drove to the banks of a river and dumped her body under the guise of night where no one could see.
At that point, we don't know where Zayden was or what happened to him.
When the deed is done, Antoine reaches out to the one woman he knows will stand by his side.
He called Tanisha in a frenzy. He told her what happened, and he asked her to help him get rid of some of the evidence.
What? He had the nerve to commit a murder in her house, and then the audacity to call her and ask her to clean it up. She was willing to take whatever Antoine would give her. He gave her the feeling of a family unit, and with that came murder.
In many ways, he may have felt in his very warped mind that that was the least that she could do, because ultimately he was protecting her, at least in his own mind, throughout the whole series of events.
Tanisha is stunned, but she knows her man needs her.
Even though she wasn't a stranger to crime, Tanisha had never been involved in anything as serious as murder before.
She had a big choice to make. Was she willing to take that next step to be involved in this crime?
Ever the devoted girlfriend, she agrees to clean up her man's mess.
Some women in this kind of a situation may see this as being their future, their everything, and therefore now they only care about this particular family unit that they're part of, and to hell with everyone else.
Tanisha rushes home with the kids, and while they're distracted elsewhere, she does exactly what he says.
Tanisha started cleaning up the crime scene, and she did her best to make sure there was no DNA evidence or any evidence that Nichelle had been there that night.
After she finished cleaning, she gathered all of the dirty rags and any leftover evidence and threw them in trash bags. She and Anton actually got in the car, threw them in the trunk, and he disposed of them in various locations around the Dayton area.
Once they believe they're in the clear, Tanisha and Antoine go about their lives as if nothing happened. But across town, Nichelle's mother grows concerned over the sudden absence of her daughter and grandson.
4 days after Nichelle and Zayden were last seen, Nichelle's mom filed a missing persons report with Dayton police.
Police start their investigation into the mother and son's strange disappearance.
Detectives looked at Nichelle's cell phone records and noticed that the last person she talked to was Antoine.
Nichelle's mother doesn't recognize the name, so police reach out to Antoine directly by phone. He is polite and cooperative and agrees to their request for an interview. But on the scheduled day, he has other plans.
The police asked him to come in for questioning, but he never showed up. And so he became a major person of interest.
So much so, they are more eager than ever to locate him.
The police teamed up with a fugitive apprehension team, and they began tracking Antoine's moves.
One day during their surveillance, they saw Antoine actually leaving Tanisha's house. So as he was pulling out of the driveway, they began to follow him.
But Antoine soon realizes he's being tailed.
They tried to pull him over. Instead, he kept going, didn't stop, and then he jumped out of the car.
He flees on foot and refuses to be cornered.
He ran into a wooded area, and he pulled out
Zayden McKnight after leaving his girlfriend Tanisha Harris's place.
The officers tried to pull him over. He kept going, but then he pulled over, jumped out of the car, and ran through a wooded area.
It turned into a real big standoff.
Realizing there's no way out, Antoine makes one last fateful decision.
He grabbed his gun and took his own life.
26-year-old Antoine Anderson is dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
He took the easy way out.
It's really difficult to explain why someone would commit suicide in a situation like this. Perhaps it's survival in a surreal level. Perhaps it's a level of desperation. Perhaps it's even cowardice. But this is something that we'll never have a clear answer to.
Tanisha is crushed by the news of Antoine's death.
When she found out Antoine took his own life, she was devastated. This was her love. This was the love of her life that she was willing to do anything for. And he no longer was with her.
All of the hopes and dreams she had about their future together were immediately dashed.
Surviving a loved one's suicide is difficult enough because you have the grieving process, you have no real answers as to why that person took their own lives. So the folks that are left behind are in shock, they're grieving, they're confused. But in this particular case, you're adding insult to injury in that he left her in a predicament, a criminal predicament, and she was now on her own. She had to work it out and figure it out by herself.
The only consolation is that authorities don't know about her involvement in the crime.
Police are still investigating what happened in Nichelle and Zayden McKnight's disappearance.
And it's only a matter of time before investigators connect the dots.
Police were able to see that her credit card had been stolen and used, and they were able to tie that back to Tanisha.
It's enough to arrest the single mom for some serious crimes.
Tanisha was charged in connection to Nichelle's credit card being stolen and being used.
Tanisha pleads no contest to 8 counts of theft. She's ordered to pay restitution back to the bank of almost $3,000. And she is sentenced to 10 months in prison. Tanisha's now where they can keep an eye on her, but investigators suspect she knows more.
With Antoine out of the picture, now Tanisha is the only suspect associated with Nichelle's disappearance.
She denies any involvement in the crime and is not charged. But with her recent plea, police have enough probable cause to search Tanisha's property, including the trunk of her car and basement. There, they find traces of blood consistent with the DNA profiles of both Nichelle and Zayden. And things go from bad to worse when Nichelle's body turns up several days later.
A passerby notices a body at the Stillwater River, and it is that of Nichelle McKnight. So this case quickly turns from a missing person incident to a homicide.
But neither she nor Antoine are officially charged with Nichelle's murder. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Tanisha confesses to her role in helping clean up after the murder.
Her attorney claims that she was frightened of what could happen to her had she gone to the police and told.
Tanisha swears she has no idea what happened to little Zayden.
She's even offered to do a lie detector test.
To this day, Zayden's body has never been found. Neither Tanisha nor Antoine have been charged with a crime surrounding Zayden's disappearance. His case is still open.
There's a lot of unanswered questions. still in this case, and things that we'll never know because Antoine isn't here to answer those questions. And the main question is, what happened to Zayden? Where is he? And that's what people want to know.
It's tough enough when a child is gone or missing or even killed. But when we don't know what happened to the child and that child is just thrown into the unknown, we don't have that closure, well, it makes it so much worse.
In connection with Nichelle's murder, Tanisha Harris is convicted of tampering with evidence, 2 counts of gross abuse to a corpse, and failure to report a crime. She is sentenced to 3 years in prison. Tanisha pinned her hopes and dreams for the future on a man who loved himself more than he loved her.
She protected him in a way. She helped to clean up the crime scene. She didn't report it to police.
Her biggest mistake was doing everything Antoine asked her to, from using somebody else's money to helping to commit a crime, to even sharing the relationship with another woman. There was nothing Tanisha was not.
DJ referred to him as his brother, even though they're not actually related.
They grew up together in West Hartford, went to Hall High School.
You find one, you find the other. I observed a tan Honda Accord parked, the doors open.
You could see blood where their victims were in the front seats when they were shot.
He never saw the shooter. He claims that he didn't know who shot them.
Alarm bells are going off in their head. This might be a retaliation.
There was one young man who really had this expectation of himself to do what was right and avenge the death of his good friend.
That's when everything went wrong.
It's just a few days before Christmas in the capital city of Hartford, Connecticut.
It's a historic city. It's a city that used to be the richest in the U.S. There is a lot of diversity here. It's rich with culture, the arts.
Hartford is a super diverse community. You have many Latinos, Puerto Ricans, South American, Central American. You have Bosnians. You have a large Albanian community. It's just African American, Asians, Laotians, you name it, we have it in Hartford.
Saturday, December 20th, 2014. Around 5:30 in the morning, a resident of the apartment building near Colt Park is startled by a loud noise.
She sees a man. He's clutching his arm. The person is bleeding profusely. He's obviously in a lot of pain. He gets inside that building and he collapses on the stairwell.
She let him use her cell phone to call 911.
She stays with the man until EMTs and officers with the Hartford Police Department arrive.
That's where he started getting medical treatment by EMS.
He is shot in the shoulder and through the elbow.
Did they know the shooter? He did not want to say who shot him. He did not want to say anything.
Responding officers learned the man's name.
Dedrick Jimenez. DJ is his nickname.
24-year-old DJ says he was shot not far from the apartment building.
He was in his brother's car when he was shot.
DJ reveals that his brother, 23-year-old Hiram Martinez, is still in the car, and he was also shot.
His brother's car is down the street. You can almost see where the vehicle was from where he was.
Investigators find a man slumped over the center console. they can see pretty quickly he's been shot at the back of the head.
Despite the wound, Hiram still has a pulse.
He is transported to the hospital. They're still working on him.
DJ Jimenez and Hiram Martinez weren't born brothers, but came to think of each other as such by way of an intense friendship that began when they were young.
They grew up together in West Hartford, went to Hall High School. People think, well, Hartford, West Hartford, same thing, but very, very different. West Hartford has a smaller town, yet urban feel to it.
DJ referred to him as his brother. He'd call Hiram his brother, even though they're not actually related. They were just close friends.
They had a fast friendship and an enduring one. They went through a lot of life together, from their boyhood to their teen years to their adult years.
As a teen, Hiram dreamed of becoming a race car mechanic. But that dream didn't pan out. When he was 20, Hiram and his girlfriend became parents to a baby girl. On December 20th, 2014, both Hiram and DJ are on their way to Hartford Hospital after suffering gunshot wounds during an early morning attack. As the men receive medical care, detectives arrive at the apartment building near the 100-acre Colt Park.
It's an area that's usually full of happy times and families and sporting events. But on this occasion, on this day, police tape is surrounding the scene.
I was asked to respond to the crime scene and assume the role as the lead investigator.
Along with Detective Richter, siblings Anthony and Mike Rakowski are also on the case.
My brother is my twin, so to be able to work with him on such, high responsibility cases is it's really an amazing thing. He brings a certain view to the table, a little bit different than mine sometimes, and we bounce back and forth off each other, and it makes for a much more well-rounded investigation.
Detectives begin their investigation in the stairwell where DJ took refuge.
We're trying to get as much information as possible as quickly as we can. So just went over there, saw what was there, which is a little blood and, some EMS equipment that they used to treat him, and then just backtracked. So I just started walking from there back towards the vehicle.
They examined the car, where the second victim, Hiram, was found.
I observed the doors open, 2 doors open.
You could see blood. You could see kind of where the victims were in the front seats when they were shot.
Hiram Martinez had been seated in the front passenger seat, and DJ was the operator of the vehicle.
That leads investigators to an important conclusion about where the shots came from.
So Hiram shot in the back of the head, and then Dedrick is shot in the shoulder and through the elbow. And if you imagine a Honda Accord, with a center console and the driver sitting in the driver position, that's consistent with being shot in the back seat. The shooter's in the back seat.
It appears likely to investigators that DJ and Hiram knew the person who shot them.
We didn't really find any shell casings outside the car. I think we maybe found a cigarette butt outside the car. We don't know if that was connected.
Investigators will have to wait for a warrant to conduct a detailed search of the vehicle. With the crime scene giving up few clues, detectives head to Hartford Hospital to speak with the victims.
They have to start figuring out why. What's the motive? Why did someone want to hurt or potentially kill both of these men? They go to the hospital. That's where DJ has had successful surgery on his shoulder and elbow. He's got permanent rods put in both.
Detectives learned that the man DJ called his brother is not so lucky.
Hiram Martinez, he died later at the hospital. We had a homicide.
Detectives speak with DJ, who is still claiming to know nothing about the attack.
We're trying to get as much information as possible as quickly as we can. He gave us bits and pieces.
The initial information he provided was, I don't want to say misleading, but it was not complete.
He initially provides information that he never saw the shooter. He claims that he didn't know who shot them, that he was in a vehicle he took off running.
Witnesses don't want to be witnesses. People are scared. They don't want to be the one that snitches.
No one wants to be, considered a snitch.
Investigators share with DJ that his beloved brother and best friend, Hiram, has died.
When he finds out that Hiram Martinez, his childhood best friend, is dead, that's when everything changed.
He started giving information about who the person was.
Now that DJ's willing to talk, investigators are all ears. And it turns out DJ has a lot to say.
The individual who shot them goes by the street name Papone.
In Hartford, Connecticut, police are investigating an early morning double shooting just days before Christmas in 2014. 24-year-old DJ Jimenez survived wounds to the shoulder and arm. His best friend, 23-year-old Hiram Martinez, was not as fortunate.
He's been shot at the back of the head, and he is pronounced dead.
After learning of his best friend's death, DJ cooperates with detectives. He says he knows who fired the shots.
That was when DJ provided the information that an individual he knows as Papone was the person who shot him.
It was someone he met during a stint in prison. Both were on parole.
DJ tells detectives he and Hiram ran into Papone the night before.
DJ says that he was out, and that's when Hiram and Papone have time together themselves.
DJ tells detectives that when he came back, Papone's mood was starkly different.
His whole disposition changed. He wasn't talkative anymore. He knew something was wrong or something was off with this guy.
Everything seemed to be fine, but now something has changed drastically. He explains to investigators something wasn't right. He didn't know what at the time.
According to DJ, Hiram pulled him aside a few moments later. He claimed that Papone became upset when Hiram started talking about another crime, one that took place about a week prior.
Hiram had actually somewhat bragged at the fact that he had killed Mariano Gonzalez on Bond Street to Papone.
Investigators interviewing DJ immediately recognized the crime DJ is referring to.
When they're hearing DJ say this, now alarm bells are going off in their head. We might have a payback. This might be a retaliation.
My brother was assigned as the lead investigator in that case. I was called in to assist. December 14th, 2014, we had patrol officers dispatched to the area. It was about almost 2 a.m. on the report of shots fired and then another call of a person shot. Officers went out to the scene. At that time, they located a victim with a gunshot wound to the head. He was pronounced deceased on scene.
The victim was 37-year-old Mariano Gonzalez.
This crime scene was fairly limited in size in the sense that it was contained to really the driveway and the street immediately in front of there. There wasn't too much for evidence at that scene other than the deceased himself. Once the initial photographs are done, and then we can kind of roll the deceased over to get a better look at him, we discovered that he had a cell phone in his pocket and he had ammunition, rifle caliber ammunition.
When investigators questioned onlookers at the scene, they learned that one woman witnessed the actual shooting.
She heard an argument outside. She heard some foul language, caused her to look out the window, and she sees the suspect shoot our victim one time. The victim falls. She sees him shoot a second time. After he shot a second time, the suspect goes through, by her account, goes through the victim's pockets, She believed he took a watch off of his wrist. As the suspect stood up, he then kicked the victim in the face and then ran away. She described him as thin, right? Very thin. He was shorter than the victim.
When detectives broke the news of Mariano's death to his family, they hoped they might also uncover a lead.
It's a huge priority for us to open up that line of communication with family and implore them to actually give us information.
But instead, Mariano's brother flew into a rage.
The brother was very aggressive, like very, very aggressive. I understand he's grieving, people process that differently. So we kind of let him be. The brother shut the door on us, like, we're done, we're not talking to you. So we didn't really get anywhere as far as establishing a timeline there or any cooperation with family.
The major challenge initially was the victim's family's lack of cooperation.
They didn't want anything to do with it, I guess because of the fear of retaliation. And you find that a lot of people don't want to get involved.
Eventually, investigators did gain access to Mariano's cell phone.
We were able to take one of the last phone numbers that had made contact with the victim and link that to Hiram Martinez. The contact, if I recall, was about 30 minutes prior to the calls for the shots fired.
Hiram also matched the description of the shooter given by the woman who witnessed the crime.
And now we have eyewitnesses giving us a description of a person consistent with Hiram Martinez. It's really starting to point towards Hiram Martinez. We're still far away from calling him a suspect. He's just someone that we want to talk to.
But before detectives could question Hiram, he too was gunned down. Back at Hartford Hospital, Hiram's best friend, DJ, tells investigators that Hiram bragged about shooting Mariano to the man who eventually shot both him and Hiram.
According to DJ, Hiram told Pepone that he killed Mariano.
We immediately suspected that there was a connection to the original Bond Street case.
Police in Hartford, Connecticut are investigating the shooting death of 23-year-old Hiram Martinez. They believe his death could be related to a shooting that claimed the life of Mariano Gonzalez just 6 days before. A killing that Hiram was suspected of carrying out.
Although we suspected that, we don't fixate on that, because it's very easy to fixate on an avenue like that and then you overlook a second potential suspect. We've seen commonly that people have multiple adversaries and multiple avenues of people that want to harm them. So, although we believed it wholeheartedly, we had to remain open-minded.
So far, the only person investigators can count on for information is the sole surviving victim of the second shooting, DJ Jimenez. As DJ recovers in a local hospital, detectives continue to press him for details.
He told us bits and pieces through multiple interviews. We met with Mr. Jimenez several times, different detectives, myself, to try to piece together what occurred. This happened over a course of a few interviews.
Over time, DJ expands on what happened when Pepone's mood had changed that night at the club, after Hiram had bragged about shooting Mariano.
It's getting late, and clearly the fun is starting to feel like it's over. Pepone's not in a good mood.
They were leaving, and Pepone had asked them to give him a ride to his girlfriend's house.
They didn't want to give him a ride. Eventually, reluctantly, I guess they did give him a ride.
DJ explains he was driving with Pepone in the back and Hiram in the passenger seat. Pepone said he needed some cigarettes. They stopped at a convenience store.
Papone wants Martinez to get the cigarettes. Martinez doesn't want to get the cigarettes. The bantering and the arguing is going on. Finally, DJ says, I'll get the cigarettes. He goes into the convenience store. He comes out with the cigarettes. Now, supposedly, they're on their way.
Then Papone requested another stop. This time so he could relieve himself. He tells DJ to pull over near Cold Park.
They pull up next to a grassy knoll on the outside of the park, and Papone gets out. DJ tells investigators that he can see Papone. And Papone
In Great Britain, there are over
not so far
31
away, but
million
he's on his
licensed
cell phone.
cars on the road.
And he watches him on his cell phone.
And many more
probably
if he
doesn't
wants,
think too much
thanks
of
to
it,
an
waits for him
attack
to
of the
get back to the
clones.
car.
Reports of car cloning have quadrupled in
Shortly
recent
thereafter, he
years,
gets back in the
making it one
vehicle,
of the
and that's
fastest
when
growing crimes.
Jimenez hears a loud bang. Covers his ears, he realizes it's a gunshot. Gets out of the car,
put on
starts running.
vehicles to hide their identity so that the police can't identify who they are and drive around about their business without being recognised. And that can go from anything from someone who's not insured.
For investigators, it raises concern that the cycle of retaliation might continue. That leaves them with a burning question. Who is Papone?
Street names are street names. They can be used by anybody.
Detectives know they need to ID Papone quickly before the bloodshed continues.
We don't want to see retaliatory violence. Anytime we have a crime of violence like this, we are very concerned about retaliation. A lot of times we see family members or close friends of victims, if they hear a name, whether it's true or not, they want to go retaliate.
Investigators aren't the only ones who are worried.
This was a crime 5 days before Christmas. The crime on Bond Street was just a week prior. This was something that really rocked the Hartford community. This was yet another homicide in a city reeling from way more than their fair share. This was something that people who lived in the area were stunned by. They were startled, they were shaken, they were scared.
Detectives hunker down, focused on finding Papone's true identity.
We will take those street names and we'll enter them into certain databases that we have, or we ask, DOC contacts, probation contacts, anybody who's familiar with somebody utilizing this street name.
We just had his nickname, and we were able to identify who he was through, our channels with the Department of Correction, because he uses that nickname, Papone, before.
We were able to take the street name information obtained from DJ. We were able to determine that Papone was, in fact, Tyrone Rosa.
To make sure they have the right guy, investigators show DJ a photo lineup.
We created a photo array. In that array, it contains our potential suspect as well as individuals who look similar.
It didn't take any time at all for DJ to say, that's him.
He did make a positive ID of Tyrone Rosa as being the person that was in the car.
In Hartford, Connecticut, detectives believe they're getting closer to finding the killer of Hiram Martinez. After Hiram's best friend, DJ, identifies Tyrone Rosa as the gunman.
After we identified Papone, or Tyrone Rosa, we just started doing a workup, a background on him to figure out where he lives, all this pertinent information.
Before they attempt to bring him in for questioning, detectives do some digging on Tyrone. They learn he was close with the murder victim, Mariano Gonzalez, and his brother, the man who'd flown into a rage in front of police upon learning of Mariano's death.
He knew Mariano, but the relationship that Papone had with his brother was far deeper than investigators first realized. They found out later, via social media, that this was someone that Papone cared deeply about. He said he loved him, he would die for him.
But But investigators speculate that Hiram had no idea the man he was socializing with at the club was so close to a man he claimed to have killed.
Tyrone and Mariano Gonzalez's brother and Mariano Gonzalez were actually friends. We don't believe that Hiram knew that when he was bragging about that homicide.
Tyrone may have wanted to retaliate because Hiram Martinez admitted to killing the brother of one of his closest friends.
Investigators also learned that the 35-year-old Tyrone Rosa is no stranger to the law.
He was on parole, which is great for us because that gives us access for an interview. And that's what we did. We ended up having his parole officer bring him up to the Major Crimes Division for an interview.
17 days after Hiram and DJ were shot, Tyrone Rosa is brought in for questioning with detectives, grudgingly.
He didn't seem nervous, per se. He definitely seemed very closed off and reluctant to speak. He was keeping his cards close to his chest.
Detectives keep at it.
We started getting to the meat of it, asking him if he knew certain people, if he was at an after-hours club with them. He, seemed reluctant to speak, but then he started giving us some information, saying he was at an after-hours club with Mr. Martinez and Mr. Jimenez.
At this point, the story is starting to line up a little bit with DJ's, but this is where the story changes.
Tyrone claims he didn't leave the club with DJ and Hiram.
They said he never went with them in the vehicle, that he stayed at the After Hours Club, and they left by themselves. When I knew he was lying, that's a good sign, actually, for me. I like when people lie in an interview. You know you're getting close.
As for the victim of the first shooting, Mariano Gonzalez, Tyrone says he had no reason to avenge that death.
He said that he doesn't really know the other victim, which was Mr. Gonzalez, and his brother, kind of downplayed. He said he knew of them, didn't really associate with them. He kept trying to downplay his association with the victim.
Investigators aren't buying it.
He didn't really want to admit that he was really close friends with him. We knew he was close friends with his brother. That's our belief for why this occurred.
Speculation isn't enough to bring murder charges, but investigators do find a way to keep Tyrone behind bars.
Because Mr. Rosa was on parole at the time, and he was a suspect in a homicide, his parole was violated, so he's remanded to custody.
Investigators keep close tabs on Tyrone. The day after his arrest, he makes a phone call from jail to Mariano's brother.
We already said he wasn't close to him, so why are you calling this guy if you don't really associate with him? So that obviously we knew he was lying.
That's not all. He asked Mariano's brother for a favor.
He also started telling this guy to destroy his phone, which is like, if you have no involvement in it, why are you telling someone to destroy their phones?
In late December 2014, police in Hartford, Connecticut are holding Tyrone Rosa in connection with the shooting death of 23-year-old Hiram Martinez. Detectives believe that Tyrone killed Hiram in retaliation for the death of his friend, Mariano Gonzalez.
He denied shooting Mr. Jimenez or Mr. Martinez. He said, I never went with them to the car.
But the day after Tyrone is taken into custody, he makes a jailhouse phone call to Mariano's brother, requesting that he tell a man named CL to destroy his phone. Investigators want to know why. They track down CL.
He was on probation for a gun arrest, so we interviewed him at his probation office.
CL admits he was with Tyrone that night.
He's friends with Tyrone Rosa, and he was with Mr. Rosa at the After Hours Club prior to the incident.
Eventually, Tyrone left the club.
He just went, didn't know where he went. Mr. Rosa didn't tell him.
Then, around 5:30 a.m., minutes after the shooting would have taken place, CL called Tyrone to ask him where he had gone. Tyrone didn't say, but asked CL to pick him up at a location near Colt Park.
He went and picked him up near the crime scene. I don't even think he knew what Mr. Rosa did, because I asked him all that and he just picked him up and was doing him a favor.
CL's statement appears to contradict what Tyrone told detectives.
Mr. Rosa denied obviously being in that car, so if you weren't in that car, you're not being picked up by the crime scene. We found the guy who picked him up by the crime scene.
In order to charge Tyrone with murder, investigators need more. They need evidence. They hope the vehicle in which Hiram and DJ were shot might give them just that.
We obtain a search warrant to process that car. The crime scene division will process it, and they'll look for all different kinds of physical evidence: DNA, fingerprints, shell casings, firearms, anything that's in there that we ask them to look for. They found a fingerprint on the inside rear door handle, which it's actually pretty rare to get a usable fingerprint. But they did recover a fingerprint, and that print later did hit to Tyrone Rosa.
Now they know what he told them about not being anywhere near the crime scene, not still being in the car, was not true. They placed Tyrone at the scene of the murder.
Though it doesn't prove he pulled the trigger, the fingerprint is the final piece of evidence investigators need to bring Tyrone Rosa one important step closer to justice.
With that positive ID, with the physical evidence to support it, that was enough.
At this point, the lead investigator will take all this information and compile it into an arrest warrant, and that's exactly what he did.
On February 18th, 2015, nearly 2 months after Hiram Martinez and DJ Jimenez were shot, Tyrone Rosa is charged with murder, first-degree assault, and criminal gun possession.
Mr. Rosa was arrested for the murder of one gentleman and assault on another gentleman.
He was already remanded to custody because he was on parole, so he's in jail already.
But will prosecutors be able to keep him there?
Throughout the court proceedings, he maintained his innocence. He said, "Someone killed him, but it wasn't me."
On February 2nd, 2015, in Hartford Superior Court, Tyrone Rosa goes on trial for the murder of Hiram Martinez and the assault of DJ Jimenez. In court, Tyrone is stoic.
He was very calm and didn't seem nervous or excited. He's kind of a low energy type of guy.
Prosecutors argue that Tyrone was out for revenge after Hiram told him that he killed Mariano Gonzalez.
The claim was that Mr. Rosa had killed this one gentleman for revenge for a friend of his that had been killed. My client gave a very different version. There was this unknown third person who my client says put a gun to his head and presumably committed the shooting.
There was one young man who really had this expectation of himself to do what was right or what was considered the admirable thing to do and avenge the death of his good friend, his friend's brother. There's no alternative other than to take the same lethal action that was used against the person that he loved.
DJ takes the stand as the state's star witness. He walks the jury through details of Mariano's murder, according to what Hiram told him.
Hiram met up with Mariano Gonzalez on Bond Street in Hartford. He was supposed to buy a gun. DJ says, changed his mind. Now Hiram doesn't want to buy the gun. Mariano was basically set on selling this gun. You're buying this gun. And that's when everything went wrong.
Mariano Gonzalez had actually threatened Hiram Martinez's family.
Hiram has a 3-year-old child and a significant other that clearly he cared about very much. So when someone threatened to wipe out his family, this did not sit the right way. DJ says that's when Hiram told him that he killed Mariano Gonzalez in cold blood.
A week later at the club, when Tyrone Rosa learned that Hiram killed Mariano, Tyrone then set his sights on Hiram. On the stand, DJ recalls the chilling moment that claimed his best friend's life.
Tyrone got out to use the bathroom. They didn't think anything of that, and as he got back in the car, DJ claims he heard a loud bang, covered his ears, realized it was a shooting, got out and ran. At that point, he realized he had been shot as well.
As the defense gets underway, Tyrone Rosa takes the stand.
He admitted to lying to police, and the reason why he lied was because he was on parole and didn't want his parole remanded.
Tyrone admits he did drive around with DJ and Hiram that night.
The police found my client's fingerprints in the car. My client didn't dispute having been in the car. Everybody agreed that he had been in the car. The question was he the shooter?
But Tyrone insists he was not.
There was no forensic evidence that directly tied my client to the shooting. They didn't find the murder weapon, for example. They didn't find any DNA on anything that directly linked my client to the murder. So the lack of that sort of evidence made the trial a credibility contest.
Tyrone offers up what he claims is the truth about what happened that night.
My client testified that while he was urinating, somebody came up behind him, put a gun to his head, and told him, "Don't move. This isn't about you." And then he heard a couple gunshots. Went back to the car where the deceased and Mr. Jimenez were, saw that the deceased had been shot, and took off running.
He basically denied being the person to pull the trigger, and he said it was somebody else who he couldn't identify who was responsible for the murder. He didn't provide any information as far as description or who might have been the person who did this.
Once all the testimony was heard in court, it was up to the jurors to decide this case. It didn't take them long before they came back, and on February 14th, their verdict was guilty.
At sentencing, Tyrone shows no remorse and continues to claim innocence.
And to this day, he's still saying that he's innocent.
The judge sees things differently.
He spoke of the senseless cycle of violence, the tragic nature in which a domino effect happened with these crimes that led to a payback. And Tyrone Rosa was about to pay.
Mr. Rosa was sentenced to 55 years for the murder of Mr. Martinez, and he got an additional 15 years for shooting Mr. Jimenez.
For investigators, this was a relief. They had a conviction. Tyrone Papone Rosa. But remember, there were two crimes here. The payback was preceded by the murder of Mariano Gonzalez.
There was a witness that in fact saw the shooter go through the victim's pockets. DNA testing was done from the victim's pockets, and the recovered DNA evidence actually came back to Hiram Martinez.
Not only did we have the story now of Hiram Martinez telling DJ, that he did commit the crime in the murder of Mariano Gonzalez, but DNA evidence confirmed it.
Closed cases cannot fill the holes left by loved ones who will never return.
Even if you do arrest somebody and they get convicted, I still don't think families ever get closure for something like that. It's just a hole ripped in their heart that just lasts forever.
I think people's motivation to avenge a wrong is to make themselves feel better or make someone else feel better. I think there's a deep down desire to correct it. And people think that, well, if I do this, I'm gonna feel better. You might in that instant, you might think you're doing.
Can't find what?
Oh, daughter. I just got home from work. My 5-year-old daughter is gone. She wasn't there when I got home. I need somebody to be here now.
Listen to me. We got 2 officers.
If I find whoever has my daughter before y'all do, I'm killing them. I don't care. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. I just want my daughter back. That's it. Just bring my baby home.
There's somebody that knows.
Somebody has her. They have her hid.
They won't keep it quiet forever.
Satsuma, Florida. A rural, quaint community. Population 5,800. Nestled just 50 miles south of Jacksonville. Filled with manicured lawns, home to many retirees, and sits along the St. Johns River. On February 9th, 2009, 5-year-old Haley Cummings had gone to elementary school like any other day. But her family wasn't prepared for what would happen that night.
I am Annette Sykes. I'm Haley's great-grandmother. She was a beautiful little girl. She always has a smile on her face, twinkle in her eye, giggles, the cutest little giggle you ever heard.
She was a little girl who had this smile that was infectious. Very happy, very loving, very maternal already at that little young age.
She'd steal your heart away in a minute. A picture of Haley. We called her Little Mama. Keep potty training her brother. That's Little Mama for you.
She was always at her dad's side whenever he was around, holding on to him.
Every step Daddy took, she took. She was glued to him.
Ronald Cummings was in a situation where he has custody at 25 years old. He's a single dad, basically, of his 2 children. He was a doting, loving father, adored Haley. They'd brush their teeth together. They spent a ton of time together. Her father, who typically works the midnight shift, picked her up at the end of the day when her school bus dropped her off in the neighborhood. He said he gave her a hug and a kiss when he went off to work at about 8 o'clock that evening.
That night, Haley was being cared for by her father's 17-year-old girlfriend, Misty Crosland.
Haley and her little brother, Ron Jr., were home with this babysitter, and from what family has told us, she was fantastic with the kids whenever they were around. It was really a normal night. Her great-grandmother actually came by to see them.
Haley and Junior were eating supper, and they put their plates down and jumped down and ran out to the car hollering, "Granny, Granny, Granny." I hugged them goodbye and gave her a kiss and told her I would see her tomorrow. And she kissed me back and told me she loved me. And we left. Of course, I didn't see her tomorrow. Tomorrow never came.
I just woke up and our back door was all open and we can't find our daughter.
Can't find what?
Our daughter.
Misty Crosland has said that she woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and says that's when she realized that Haley was gone from bed.
When did you last see her?
It was about 10 o'clock. She was sleeping, screaming.
At around 3 o'clock, which is when Ronald came home, is when the 911 call was made by both of them.
You said your back door was wide open?
Yes, it was a brick. Like, there's a brick on the floor. Like, when I went to sleep, the door was not like that.
What is the brick?
It's on the back, on the stair. Like, we have, like, a walkway.
And there was a brick laying there?
Yes, it's still there.
Was your back door locked, do you know?
Yes, but that's what always stays locked. And I need somebody to get here now. I just got home from work. My 5-year-old daughter is gone. I need somebody to be here now. I'm telling you.
Listen to me. We got 2 officers.
If I find whoever has my daughter before y'all do, I'm killing them. I don't care. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm telling you, you can put it on record, and I don't care.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I answered the phone, and when I said hello, he started, "Granny, somebody stole my little girl. Somebody stole my little girl."
What kind of description of her pajamas that she was wearing?
I don't know.
Of course, he was hysterical. I mean, he was just out of his mind. He went in the house, and he was looking everywhere, turning the furniture upside down, trying to find her. And she wasn't in there.
Misty Crosland's first 911 call is made at 3:27 a.m. 13 minutes later, at 3:40 a.m., detectives arrive at the scene.
We're investigating a disappearance of a 5-year-old female by the name of Haley Ann Marie Cummings. The rear door of the residence was found to be open.
I'm Captain Dominic Piscatello. During the Haley Cummings investigation, I was chief of detectives. On February 10th, I got a call that we had a missing child. I had some detectives that had just gotten on scene and began the search process. And as I'm driving there, they're telling me, we're not finding anything here in the house that would indicate that Haley's inside this house. Which kind of sent a chill through me.
I'm John Merchant. I was the lead investigator for the disappearance of Haley Cummings. As the dispatch was providing me the information of where I needed to go, I could hear the chaos in the background, and you just know then this is the big one.
Any evidence of an abduction?
We're not really sure. We're looking at it from all different angles. The child is missing. It's missing from the home. Whoever has a child is not supposed to have the child at this point.
We started to shut down the house, actually. We took the people out of the house, thinking now possibly we may have a crime scene here.
My name is Robert Mathis. At the time this all occurred, I was the head of the Homicide Investigation Unit for the State Attorney's Office. We would not have been called in if they hadn't believed that there was a substantial chance that this was a homicide.
The girlfriend who was with Haley at her disappearance and the father are cooperating with law enforcement 100% at this point.
Came home this morning to find out that I didn't have a child, that somebody stole my child. It's not like a bicycle or a car. Somebody stole my child from me.
Ronald, you don't think she could have just wandered off?
No,
She would not
no
leave
way.
the house.
My daughter's
She's
afraid of the dark.
There is no way she left that house by herself.
Somebody stole my child.
There was probably a span of about 7 to 8 hours from the time that Misty said that she put Haley to bed, or Haley went to sleep, until Ronald got home from work.
Within hours, we had 200 people on the ground here. We had choppers in the air. We had 3 dive teams in the water. We had investigators doing neighborhood canvass for that whole area.
My daughter is still gone somewhere. It's not time to give up.
It was incredible to see the force that came to this small rural community to find this little girl.
We're going to pray for Haley right now.
We have a young child that's been missing for several hours now, and we do not know the whereabouts of the child. So that is of a great concern for us.
Neighbors were on edge. Haley's family even camped out in tents overnight during the search.
This little girl, it's cold out here tonight, is out there somewhere with someone or even possibly alone.
The room I'm in right now kind of encompasses the volume of the investigation. As you can see behind me, there are binders and binders of books, all the maps, all the things that we did in this case to try to find Haley. This is the home of Haley Cummings. When our deputies got here, the first thing we noticed was Ron's car was parked right here.
Exclusive crime scene photos for the first time show Haley's home after the second deputy arrived.
As we come around the side, this was an interesting part. This is a bit where we believe that they say Haley came out of the residence. There used to be a big long ramp that came off of the house that came down to the ground here. When we got here, we found that screen door was propped open with a brick, a cement block. Although it's probably not the screen door that was here initially, we took those doors to process. This is what Haley would have seen late at night when it's pitch dark. So I'm sure that a young girl wouldn't want to travel off into the bushes. There was a vehicle here that Ron owned, a white pickup truck that kind of sat here, and then another vehicle that was inoperable. It was here full of clothes and other items. We don't believe that Misty had any keys to that vehicle. She had no real transportation that was here at the scene that we could show.
The sheriff's office pointed out these mystery letters on Ronald's truck. The sheriff's office and experts have looked at the letters, but little is still known about them.
It was pretty dark that night. The houses that are close by, the neighbors are merely about 100 feet away. So it would be kind of difficult at night if there's nothing's lit up for them to see anything that's actually going on. And no one so far has been able to tell us they saw anything going on during that initial night when Haley disappeared from this residence. We saw a firearm sitting on top of in the kitchen. Right away we were like, what's this about?
Detectives found out the gun belonged to Haley's father. He had been carrying the gun, looking for whoever took his daughter.
There was a blanket on the back porch right next to the cinder block that was used to prop the door open. It was the blanket that was actually on the bed with her.
Well, that was found outside because when the initial bloodhound got there, they wanted a scent item from Haley, and one of the dogs tracked to the river, which is a quarter mile maybe from the house. We put a massive effort of dive teams in the water there.
Investigators scoured the river, but found no sign of Haley.
We didn't know who the suspect was, so anybody at that point could have been a suspect.
The sheriff's office said 44 sex offenders lived in a 5-mile radius of Haley's home.
But we had a sex offender that lived right in the neighborhood, 200 feet away.
And every one of those sex offenders was checked out.
But after all of those interviews, from what they tell me, they cleared everyone, and no one was considered a primary suspect in Haley's disappearance.
Haley, I love you. And your daddy loves you. We all love you. Please, just take her home.
Investigators also wanted to know about Haley's biological mom and if her relationship with Ronald Cummings played a role in Haley's disappearance.
When was the last time you actually saw your daughter?
2 weeks ago.
Haley's mom had been over 60 miles away in Glen St. Mary, Florida, the night Haley disappeared.
Do you know where the cinder block came from that was propping the door open?
Don't have a clue. I don't mess with none of that, so I don't know.
We clearly were able to find the brick, where the brick came from that actually propped open this door. It was back here by this water tank. So this block we were able to tell because of the impression of the dirt in the ground here where it was buried, as well as the dirt impression on the block matched.
We actually had that concrete block analyzed. We tried to get touch DNA off the block to see if perhaps somebody had been there that we didn't know.
We actually got a very small amount of DNA hit on the block, which was not enough DNA to actually identify the person's DNA.
At this point, we do not have any signs of any forced entry into the residence.
The only indicator that there was something wasn't right was the back door being propped open.
Does the door look like it was pried open? Does it look like someone tried to enter into your house?
No, it doesn't.
There's no evidence that we pried open the door.
The lock isn't jimmied. The doors aren't jimmied.
Misty said the door was locked. That was kind of strange because when we get there, everything's unlocked. And Misty said she didn't unlock it.
It always stayed closed and Haley couldn't open it.
then did an abductor get into the mobile home to take this little girl.
Detectives also found something else disturbing.
We do have one spot of blood of Haley's, and it's a smear, and it's on her bed. We don't know if that happened that night. She's a 5-year-old girl. They get scraped knees.
Detectives took the drains from the bathroom sink and shower of the home and presumptively tested for blood. They found a small amount of blood, but they could not make a DNA match.
There was no smell of any cleaner, so the indication that blood or any type of evidence would have been removed, there was nothing to indicate that.
Hours after Haley vanished, Misty Crosland and Ronald Cummings were interviewed separately at the sheriff's office. Never before seen video now shows Misty and Ronald together after those interviews.
Don't let Ronald come here because you seem like you're pretty upset.
Yeah, why you do it?
I would never let nothing happen to her. If I knew something, I could let someone just take her. Do you think I'd let someone take your daughter and hurt her or something? Because I would never do that. I didn't go knock at the door. I didn't go knock any door.
There's some things that happened at the house that morning that just didn't seem right.
Investigators came back to the last person to see Haley Cummings before she disappeared, and that last person was Misty Crosland.
Do you believe that Misty was indeed home and that she's been telling the truth?
Yeah, I believe she's telling the truth.
Misty has been interviewed extensively. There's a lot of misinformation going on around here. We're trying to collect the facts, and that's where we're going to stick with it.
Coming up, Misty breaks her silence.
I just wanted to come home. I just want to find her.
And exclusive video for the first time shows detectives walk Misty back through the home. And they make a shocking discovery.
Show me what was different about this cinder block. You said there was something different about it?
That's not what was holding that door open. Just wish they would have took me instead of her. What do they want with a little 5-year-old? She's a good kid. There's no sense in someone doing this stuff to her.
5-year-old Florida girl Haley Cummings and her little brother are tucked into bed. But hours later, Haley mysteriously vanishes. Haley's father was at work, while his teen girlfriend Misty Crosland was home, babysitting the children.
There's no longer any reason to believe that the child simply wandered outside, so we are treating this absolutely like an abduction. All the world's a suspect right now.
I put her to bed about, 8 o'clock, because that's her bedtime. And I went come in there and put her blanket on her, and then I lay down. I got up because I had to use the bathroom, but I didn't make it to the bathroom. I seen the kitchen light on, and I walked in the kitchen, and the back door is wide open. I didn't notice about Haley then until I seen the back door open, and then I go in the room, and she's gone.
As investigators dig deeper, they were becoming suspicious of Misty's story.
From an outside person looking at it, things may seem odd. From an investigator, things may have seemed staged.
We knew Ronald was at work. Misty was the person who was there the entire time. Whatever happened to this child happened.
Misty had many stories that she wanted to tell us. Throughout the investigation, she was somewhat rehearsed in the very beginning of what she wanted to tell me.
The first story she told, they're all in the bedroom, and somebody comes in the middle of the night and takes this child away, and nobody wakes up. None of it matched up.
I didn't hear anything at all. Nothing. If I heard something, I would have got up and I wouldn't have let them take her.
The idea that somebody's going to come in that room and take a 5-year-old girl without somebody waking up was just beyond the pale of reality. We were told that Haley was a very active and very verbal 5-year-old. That made us concerned about the story that we were getting from the get-go.
You would think that there would be some type of indicators that she didn't go easily, and there was none of that. It leads us to the fact that there's probably a great probability there wasn't a stranger.
Very shortly after that 911 call was made, a deputy interviewed Misty Crosland. She said that the reason that she got up was because she wanted to get a drink of water.
But when she's interviewed by the TV reporter, her story changes.
3 o'clock in the morning, I got up because I had to use the bathroom, but I didn't make it to the bathroom. I seen the kitchen light on.
She told us that the reason that she got up was to go to the bathroom. It seemed suspicious to investigators. Facts are facts in their mind, and they couldn't understand why there would be a deviation from those facts.
A lot of details inside the house that made us say, hey, let's look at Misty.
One of the key inconsistencies was the fact that we located the identical shirt that Misty says that she was wearing when she went missing was actually found inside the dirty clothes hamper.
She reported to us Haley was in this specific Hannah Montana shirt, pink shirt. We did a video walkthrough of the scene with Misty. We actually show Misty the shirt.
Exclusive video you will only see here shows that moment.
This is the outfit she was wearing. This is the shirt she had on. She didn't have a shirt. This is the shirt she had on right here. This is it. That's her Hannah Montana shirt that she had on when she went to bed. But this is the shirt she had on. And she didn't have a shirt on, and she didn't have a shirt on. She didn't have a shirt on. This is the shirt she had on when she went to bed.
Locating the shirt in the laundry room that she supposedly had on at the time she went missing was a big deal to us. And you got to understand, this was very, very early in the investigation.
When you put her to bed at 8 o'clock, she had that shirt on.
She had the shirt on.
When you put the blanket over her, she had that shirt on.
She had the shirt on. This is the shirt she had on right here. She had the shirt on when she went to bed.
How do you think that shirt got in that clothes on?
When these indicators start popping up, that's when everything starts going from the outside. It starts focusing right back on Misty again.
One of the things she told us is she washed Haley's blanket because it had pee on it. There's clothes piled on the floor. Doesn't look like there's hardly any soap that she could use. That didn't seem to make sense.
So there are clothes on the floor? Yes. And there's these clothes that are on the floor. And now are those clean or what? These are dirty. They were pushed in a pile, not like they were. Okay. Anyway. So there was a pile of dirty clothes on the floor. Yeah. You had done laundry that night. I done blankets.
She claims the door standing wide open.
I seen the back door open.
Well, the door couldn't be standing wide open because the clothes were all piled in front of the door. So it didn't seem to make a lot of investigative sense at that point.
Up next, there was something else discovered in the home that was troubling investigators.
My daughter came up missing out of my house in the middle of the night.
5-year-old Haley Cummings goes missing while her dad is at work. Her dad's girlfriend, Misty Crosland, was babysitting. But for investigators, some things about her story weren't making sense.
She had indicated to us that they were all three in the same bed together. As time changed, during one of the interviews I'd done with her, she indicates that Haley was in her own bed.
The bed where Misty Crosland was sleeping, and here little Haley was sleeping. It is all but about 3.5 feet from each other. This is right where Misty said she got up, and she had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Instead of using the bathroom that's right there by the bedroom, she decided to walk out into the living room.
It's a mobile home. It had a typical hard door and then what we would call a storm door on the outside. I haven't never seen one open or close that didn't make some sort of noise. In order for somebody to take a concrete block and prop this aluminum door open, where's the noise? Why didn't this wake everybody up?
Here's the back screen door, the one that was propped open with the cinder block. When it closed, it slams, it makes a loud noise. But if you leave this door, this slowly closes as well.
And of course, the call didn't come in until the father got home from work. That was about 3 o'clock in the morning.
I can't imagine taking 20 minutes looking for it and not calling for help. She had taken a shower before we got there. So that was kind of strange.
In order to tell a lie, it's tough because you have to keep telling a lie. And that's where I feel the inconsistencies came in at. is there was no truth in them.
No, she was there. My brother, she was just gone.
Her stories jump from one thing to another. I don't know if maybe she was trying to find something that they would believe or listen to.
I don't know what else you got. You want me to show you?
I wouldn't say that Misty doesn't remember anything. I feel comfortable that she knows all. She just hasn't told us.
I just want everybody to know that I didn't do anything with that little girl. I love her like she's my own, and I'll do anything to get her back.
Don't you think that hurts her bad enough? She was the last person to see him.
The last time I seen her is when I put her to bed.
It had nothing to do with her, man. She can't help that. She can't help she was the last one to see her.
But then, Haley's dad makes a stunning move.
We were all shocked.
It really kind of blew our minds.
And could it help him get any closer to finding his daughter?
I put her to bed, and about 8 o'clock, and I woke up, and she was gone, and the back door was wide open. What the hell? Why is the back door open? You know why? I didn't put that back. I'm freaking out because the back door is open already. So I walk into the room, come to get my cell phone, turn back and see Haley is gone.
5-year-old Haley Cummings suddenly vanishes from home overnight.
She was gone.
Her dad's girlfriend, Misty Crosland, was babysitting Haley and her little brother.
She was nowhere.
We knew that no matter what, the child was not in that neighborhood. She was gone.
Investigators were narrowing in on Misty Crosland.
Her story's changed multiple times.
She was a very good liar. You'd catch her in a lie, and she'd just tell you another one and expect you to believe it.
But Haley's dad, Ronald Cummings, seems to be standing by Misty.
I love that little girl like she was my own.
I'd like to have the allegations against my girlfriend cleared up. She had nothing to do with this. I had nothing to do with this.
Then, a month after Haley's disappearance, Ronald makes a shocking move.
She hasn't smiled much since Haley's been gone, but Misty Crosland was beaming as she went to the courthouse to get a marriage license with Haley's dad, Ronald Cummings. She smiled as she showed us her engagement ring and told us about the surprise proposal.
Last night at Chili's.
What did he do?
He got down on his knees and said, "Will you marry me?"
We were all shocked. If I had a child that age, and the person was there when the child disappeared and her stories didn't match up, I don't think I'd be deciding to marry that person.
Everybody's probably going to take this marriage thing the wrong way, but it's not. Everything's still focused on Haley. This is what Haley wanted. She's always talked about it.
It really kind of blew our minds, and what they're worried about is getting together and getting married. Well, the law enforcement and the hundreds of people are looking for his child. Our theory on that is because he felt at some point we were going to try to charge him for having a relationship with a girl that was under 18. So I think he was trying to protect himself.
Ronald never would come out and say he thought that Misty had something absolutely to do with it, but Ronald felt that Misty knew what happened. He was thinking about how this could possibly help him find Haley.
I spent a lot of time with Ronald, and he asked me, he said, should I marry her? And I said, Ronald, if you can get it, get it.
I did take a polygraph.
And you passed it?
I mean, my understanding is that I passed it.
During the investigation, Misty was provided a multitude of polygraphs and what they call a VSA, voice stress analysis test.
I just want to let everybody know that I was home because I did pass my lie detector test saying that I was home.
She failed miserably, each and every one of them.
So I got up and went to the kitchen, and that's when I noticed the back door is wide open. And that's when she was gone. Then I just started freaking out. We were looking under beds, closets, everywhere, screaming her name. Couldn't find her.
Curiously enough, the beds were all on the floor. There was no way to look under a bed.
Nobody has been cleared. When it comes to Misty Crosland, I do believe that she holds additional information that could bring this case to a closure.
But Ronald believed Misty didn't know anything more about Haley's disappearance.
He defended her consistently for months and months and months. As time passed and Haley's still missing and they have no suspects, I really think that Ronald Cummings started to wonder. Could he have been wrong about Misty?
Love turned to, well, she's not being honest with me. How can I love somebody that, allowed my daughter to go missing and she won't tell me what happened?
Tensions were mounting, but then there was a major break in the case.
This is our day. Somebody's fixing to give it up. Tonight's the night.
Investigators make an arrest. What secrets will they uncover?
That's the question everybody wants to know. Were you home the night Haley disappeared?
What do you want to say to the people who are calling your story inconsistent, Missy? Do you have anything to say to them?
5-year-old Haley Cummings vanishes from home, the back door propped wide open. The last person to see Haley was her dad's girlfriend, Misty Crosland. Haley's dad, Ronald Cummings, shocked everyone when he married Misty Crosland a month after his daughter's disappearance.
I think that Ronald started becoming frustrated with Misty. Misty just kept saying, I don't know. And he really, truly believed she knew what had happened, and it just became too much for their marriage.
Ronald divorced Misty after nearly 8 months of marriage.
We can't go anywhere without being questioned or people staring at us.
He thinks like the rest of us. She's a big fat liar. The girl don't know how to tell the truth.
You want to hop in?
Baby, get in.
11 months after Haley's disappearance, investigators get a big break in the case.
Got them pinned in little double gram baggies if you want to count them out real quick and make sure they're all in there.
They had kind of lost contact with each other a little, but then Misty reached out to him, hey, can you help me do these things? He said, all right, I'll do it.
Our undercovers caught Misty and Ronald selling illegal narcotics, and then they set up the deal.
There's 100 there, there should be 100 there.
I told myself that day, this is our day. Somebody's fixing to give it up. I had chill bumps.
100 in there.
Yep, there's 100 in here. If they're all in 10 packs. There's 100. Yep. There should be 10 in each one.
Yep.
I'll get it for you, no problem. 2 weeks I can make the money to pay for them and eat them myself. All right.
Uh-oh.
This mother. Hang on. Hey, do me a favor.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Ronald Cummings and Misty Crosland were both arrested in the undercover drug sting.
Once they were arrested, we thought, let's give this an opportunity for us to go back in.
I'm not going out on a limb when I say this. A deal was ready to be made. I can assure you there were prosecutors there, and we were ready to recover Haley, whatever it took.
Ms. Cummings, you've been charged with 4 counts of trafficking in hydrocodone out of Putnam County. A total of 5 counts of trafficking hydrocodone.
We had a drug charge that carried a 25-year minimum mandatory. We thought maybe we would have enough that we could put pressure on her to tell us what really happened.
It just didn't happen.
If you'll tell us what's going on, we'll work with you. Yeah, no.
What are you doing? What's wrong? I need to get out of here.
While they were all incarcerated in local jails, we monitored their phone calls very, very closely. Misty spent a lot of time on the phone with her parents.
They say, it's not enough, it's not enough. They want more. There is no more. I tell them and tell them and tell them. They just don't listen.
She just told us lie after lie after lie and didn't faze her.
I hate being called a liar. I'm not a liar. I'm telling you the truth. But leave me alone.
2 separate times she told me she don't know what I'm talking about, and she was asleep. And she can't help me.
Don't be holding nothing back from nobody.
Daddy, I'm not.
Get it out there. Let it out, man. Tell the truth.
I swear on everything I've told the truth, Dad. There's nothing else to I don't know.
That's one phone call that stands out to me. But if you don't want to hurt nobody, just tell us the truth. Let's get to the bottom of it.
Just weeks after Misty's arrest, there's a major development.
We met with the family of this missing child. We do have a search going on at this time.
I'm not hiding anything, so.
I know. Why would you sit there if you knew something?
I cry all the time. about Haley. Pray all the time about Haley.
5-year-old Haley Cummings mysteriously vanishes as her dad's girlfriend, Misty Croslin, was watching over her.
I'm scared. I don't want to be stood up or nothing.
Then, months later, in a strange twist, Misty and Haley's dad are arrested in an undercover drug bust.
Uh-oh. This mother. Hang on. Hey, do me a favor.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Why I'm in jail has nothing to do with Haley. I didn't have anything to do with Haley, and if I knew who did, I would tell him.
3 months after Misty's arrest on drug charges, investigators get a big tip.
Breaking news tonight in the search for Haley Cummings. This is brand new video just into our newsroom from Sky 4 of the area where investigators spent the day searching for new clues in the case.
The tip suggested physical evidence might be found in the river that could explain Haley's disappearance. The search was 5 miles from Haley's home and was the same river the canine indicated picking up her scent. Was Misty Croslin starting to crack behind bars?
She gave a confession of having some knowledge of what happened and indicated that she watched her brother and her cousin remove Haley from the home. She indicated she was put in the water and waded down to the bottom.
We took Misty down to Shell Harbor when we were doing the diving, hoping that that might break her.
We wanted to maximize that effort to let Misty see, hey, maybe you being out here will allow you the opportunity to say, this is what happened.
We were looking for a shock and awe. She knew that she sent us there for this search. I remember her, she had tears in her eyes as she cried.
We truly believed at that time we were starting to get to a conclusion in the case.
Over the past few weeks, information has been obtained by investigators that lead them to believe that Haley Cummings is most likely deceased. At this point, I'm comfortable to go ahead and say that I'm going to call it a homicide.
We actually recovered a block with a rope on it, and we sent it to the lab. That all came back that it was not within the time frame of Haley's disappearance.
We had an anthropologist from the University of Florida over there to examine every piece of bone that was found.
After days of searching the river, no evidence of Haley or her body were found.
It's a big river. That tide runs through there pretty heavily. There are tons of alligators. The chances of ever finding the body, if it was placed in the river, are very, very slim.
Misty's brother and cousin were never suspects, and the story Misty told was never confirmed.
What it appears to us now is that they maybe were making up stories to get other drug charges.
One of the investigators told me that on the way back, driving her back to jail, she said, you know, I'm not telling the truth. Never mind, that didn't really happen.
The fact that she lied from us from day one, indicating that it was an abduction, and then changed her story to seeing a lifeless Haley, that's a clear indicator to me that she does know something.
You may not have a lot of book smarts, but you got a lot of street smarts. This case is not about Haley Cummings. This case is about you. On the charge of trafficking in oxycodone, an amount between 28 grams and 30 kilograms. You are adjudicated guilty of the offense. You're sentenced to serve 25 years in the Department of Corrections with a 25-year minimum mandatory, followed by 5 years of drug offender probation.
If I were sitting here today and somebody were to ask me, could I single this case down to one particular person who I would put my focus on, it remains on Misty. Misty, tell us the truth. It's just that. Tell us the truth.
There's people, I'm sure, that sit out there and say, well, you have a 17-year-old girl. The 17-year-old girl beat you all. You know, you couldn't get her to tell you the information to find this young child. But Misty's mentality and things about Misty made her a victim that maybe would seal herself up. Every day I look at this little girl's face. This is what hangs on my wall in my office right in front of me. I see this little girl's face, that little innocent face, and it kind of brings it to reality every day that, hey, you have a job to try to find this. Even when things don't seem to be going the way we want them to go, this little girl is what motivates us to keep trying to go forward.
Hear my prayer, hear my plea. Please bring Haley back to me. We know, Lord God, there is no other who can bring her home to me and brother. This is Haley's room. It has her name up on the wall. The things that are in it were given her. They'll be here when she comes home, waiting for her. Do not know where she is or what happened to her. There isn't a way to describe it except it's a living hell.
Ronald Cummings was sentenced to 15 years behind bars on drug trafficking. He is expected to be released in December 2022. To this day, Haley's disappearance remains unsolved. No one was ever charged or arrested in connection with Haley's disappearance. This is what she would look like at the age of 12. If you have any information that could lead to her whereabouts, please contact 888-277-TIPS. There's a $15,000 reward if your tip leads to an arrest.
I'm actually camping.
This is the campsite where Dior and his family were camping.
My 2-year-old son. We can't find him.
Dior is gone. She sees her little son playing in the dirt with some toys.
Last time I saw him was the back of his head, walking towards my grandpa.
Not a trace of my son found. Vanished.
He doesn't go anywhere without his blanket, his cup, or his monkey. All three of them were left at the campground.
Where did he go?
Nobody had the baby.
Lador, Idaho is a very remote area. There's no big buildings around. There's not a lot of services, no restaurants, no McDonald's, nothing like that.
When you pull into Lador, it doesn't take long for you to pull through. I mean, it's small.
Population? Just 105.
A lot of people visit Lador to camp, to fish, to spend time outdoors. It's a beautiful, rugged area.
It's often said, don't blink or you'll miss it. It's a small little town, a very close-knit little town.
And it's where 2-year-old Dior Kuhn's family decided they would go camping.
They decided on a whim, let's go camping for the weekend. Baby Dior was a typical toddler. Loved to play with his cars, loved to be with his family. There's pictures of him fishing with his parents and spending time with them. A typical, adorable little blonde-haired boy.
A boy his parents nicknamed Little Man.
Jessica Mitchell is Dior's mother. Vernal Coons is Dior's father. He had been with Jessica for several years, high school sweethearts. He was a truck driver. Robert Walton is Jessica's grandfather. He grew up in Idaho. He served in the military. He was not in perfect health when they went camping. In fact, he was on oxygen.
With Grandpa Bob's health deteriorating, this camping trip may be his last, which is why he has chosen the Timber Creek Campground, an approximately 30-minute drive from the small town of Leadore.
Timber Creek Campground always held a special place in his heart, and that's why they decided to go that day. The Timber Creek Campground is very remote. You kind of have to know about it if you're going to go camping there.
Thursday, July 9th, 2015. 2-year-old Dior, along with his mom, dad, and Grandpa Bob, arrive at the Timber Creek Campground around 10 p.m. A campground so remote, the closest nearby campers are about a half a mile away. The people on this trip are alone.
According to the parents, it's pretty dark. It's late, it's pitch black, there's no street lights up there, and they go to sleep.
But the next day, everything changes.
What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Leadore, just outside of Leadore.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
Steve Penner is the sheriff of Lemhi County, Idaho.
At the time of the disappearance, I was chief deputy for Lemhi County. The call came in around 2:30.
How long has he been missing?
About an hour. Yeah.
Are you by water?
Yes.
I was actually handling another call in town, and dispatch called me and said, hey, we got a missing child in Timber Creek.
Do you know which campground you're in?
It's Stone Reservoir, Timber Creek.
We need search and rescue.
I was told that the child was left in the care of the grandfather. The parents went fishing. When they came back, they couldn't find him.
Dior's parents, Vernal and Jessica, say that they're going to go off and go down by the creek and check out the fish that are down there. And they said that they said to Grandpa, hey, can you watch little Dior while we go to the creek? And Grandpa said, sure, that's no problem. The parents go down to the creek, they spend some time at the creek.
Vernal returned to the campsite thinking baby Dior was with the great-grandfather. The great-grandfather thought the baby Dior was with Vernal.
They say to Grandpa, where's Dior? Grandpa says, we thought he was with you. Well, no, we left him with you.
That's when they realized nobody had the baby. He was nowhere to be found.
The initial search was massive.
We want to cover every little nook and cranny.
We had helicopter, some divers in the reservoir, 2 dogs trying to unravel things, searchers on ATVs, motorcycles, and on foot.
You had crews on horseback. You had crews walking with sticks and tools, to look in the water. You actually had rescue crews in the creek, on hand and foot, crawling, combing every inch of that creek with their hands.
But those searches turned up nothing.
We're dealing with 4 million acres of rugged terrain. How do you search over 4 million acres and hit every spot?
2-year-old Dior Coons has seemingly vanished into thin air.
Once it took hold that there was a missing child in the forest, it didn't take very long for this to catch the airwaves, and it did pretty quickly.
With breaking news in the desperate search for an Idaho toddler who vanishes on a family camping trip, the parents are convinced that their toddler boy has been kidnapped.
2-year-old from Idaho Falls is missing tonight. He was with my
playing with Grandpa. He's getting ready for a nap. By that time, it was almost 2, and he usually takes his nap. We decided we were going to go a little exploring. He was going to be good with Grandpa by the campfire. We weren't more than probably 50 yards away in 10 minutes. When I come back up to get him, and I yelled over to Grandpa, where's little Dior? He immediately shocked. He says, I thought he came up to you. just in a split second, your whole world is upside down and vanished. There's not a trace.
Everybody across the country has picked up this story. And people all over the world are talking about this cute little blonde boy from Idaho who's missing at this campsite. Should he be out there and happen to see this, what would you say?
We're looking for you, son, and we will find you. And we love you more than anything in the world. You have a lot of people who love you and are looking for you. Buddy will find you. Daddy will find you.
Looking until we get you a home. So if somebody has him, please don't hurt him. Just bring him home safely to us.
No matter what it
where
takes.
He belongs.
It's a beautiful country.
My name is Philip Klein. I am with Klein Investigations and Consulting in Nederland, Texas. Since 1992, we've done over 900 missing persons cases, probably more. In this case, I was the senior investigator regarding the Dior Coons disappearance. We got our airplane reservations, immediately flew up here with 4 members of the team to do the advance, find out, hey, what's going on, what's happening.
We started at a hotel with a video camera, interviewing everybody one by one, alone.
This camping trip was a trip that you wanted to take?
Yeah. I haven't been up there for 30 years. That's the reason I wanted to go there.
It's also a trip Vernal, also known as Dior Sr. or Big Dior, didn't want to take.
Vernal didn't want to go on this camping trip. He didn't want to go. He was very irritated about going.
I was told we were going camping, and when Bob's involved, it's always fishing too. I was really hoping Jessica would just say, we're not going. That happens once in a while. I kind of throughout the day gave her text messages hinting I don't want to go.
But there's one problem to the story that Grandpa Bob was asked to watch Dior. Grandpa Bob says he doesn't exactly remember that.
Dior Sr., Jess, walk away from the camp.
Right.
And do they ask you to watch Little Dior?
That's what I hear.
Okay, that's what you hear?
That's what I hear.
Jessica said, I want to go do some fishing. Jessica looked at Bob. You got him? Yeah, I've got him. I'll watch him. We started walking off.
I looked at the back of his head. And I don't remember what I said to him. The last thing that I said to my son. And that kills me because it was my idea, like, oh, yeah, I want to go fishing. Like, as a mom, I don't get that. I gotta do something for me time. So when my grandpa said he would watch him, I was all for it. I was excited.
Where was Little Dior as they're walking off? And from your vision point, where is Little Dior?
It was off to my left, about 80, 90 feet, sitting right there.
And he's gone?
He's gone.
How does someone poof into thin air? The story just didn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't jive. It just doesn't.
Do you think your grandson could have been kidnapped?
Possibility. I'm wondering if somebody was watching us and come down and got the kid.
It turns out the Coons family and Grandpa Bob weren't the only people on that camping trip. Grandpa Bob had brought a friend.
So he was just with you and the grandfather when he wandered away?
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys thought he was with the parents?
Yeah. I don't want to answer any more questions or anything.
So it's July 9th, 2015. A little boy named Dior Coons goes camping with his mom and dad. Dad's name is Vernal, mom's name is Jessica. Accompanying them on this camping trip is Jessica's grandfather, Robert Walton.
This is the Timber Creek campground, and this was the spot where the family came up and started camping. It's kind of the spot where it all began.
The parents go down to the creek, they spend some time at the creek, they come back to the camping site, and Dior is gone. His parents say they don't know what happened. Other people on the camping trip say they don't know what happened. Now the search is on for this little boy. Do you believe it was an abduction?
You know, personally, I think an abduction is one of the least likely events. Primarily, the information we have is Grandpa's watching the child. He tells me he looks away momentarily. When he looks back, he's gone. And I can't completely rule it out, but it's one of the least likely things that occurred.
But if it wasn't an abduction, what could have happened to Dior Kuhn?
There are a few different scenarios that could have happened on this camping site.
One theory, an animal attack.
The animals and the wildlife in this part of the country, it's not just chipmunks, it's not just groundhogs. There are cougars, there are wolves, there are grizzly bears, there are very large, very aggressive animals.
There's bears, lions, wolves. They're major predators. Little Dior, he's a fawn. He's the size of what they're consuming that time of year.
But there's no evidence Dior was taken by an animal.
Wildlife's going to leave a trail. You're going to hear something, you're going to find blood evidence, you're going to find clothing evidence, you're going to find a body part, you're going to find bones. They're not going to eat the bones.
In fact, there's no evidence of little Dior at all.
You've got so many resources up there and not one shred of evidence.
It turns out Dior's parents and the little boy's great-grandfather weren't the only people on this trip. There was also a man named Isaac Renwand, a friend of Grandpa Bob's, who little Dior's family had never met before taking this trip.
One of the things we wanted to accomplish on this trip to Idaho was we really wanted to actually speak with Isaac. Our photographer and I drove up to the house. We approached the front door, and as we knocked on the door, there was about a 30-40 second pause, and there was nobody clearly coming to the door. We were about to knock again or kind of turn away and just assume nobody was home. Isaac popped his head up out of the window. I didn't anticipate that. We asked him if he would like to have a conversation on camera. He said to us that he really wasn't interested at the time.
But he did talk to the East Idaho News.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just want to see if you have anything to say about Dior missing. I don't.
No. Can you tell us what happened up there?
I don't know. He just disappeared.
So he was just with you and the grandfather when he wandered away?
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys thought he was with the parents?
Yeah.
And the parents came back and he was gone?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't want to answer any more questions or anything.
Here's a stranger who's with this family on a camping trip. These parents that had never really dealt with him, they don't really know who he is.
I didn't know the guy up until the day before my son went missing. It's the first night I met the guy.
My grandpa said, my friend Isaac's going to go.
Bob said, his exact words are, we got to go over and pick up a friend of mine. And I said, well, who is it? And he says, buddy of mine. And his exact words, and I quote, were, he's a good guy, he's a little weird, but he's an all right guy.
Why did you invite Isaac up to this particular camping trip?
Oh, I don't really know why. He just goes along sometimes, that's the way.
They arrived up at the campgrounds late in the evening. They set camp up, lit a fire.
Tell me Isaac's demeanor that night when y'all was sitting around the campfire.
I just remember him playing with like this machete knife thing. He kept grabbing it and there was this log that was cut and he kept just like throwing it down so it would get stuck in the wood and then pulling it out and then throwing it back down and then pulling it out.
They talked in the statements about Isaac being irritated with the baby. Why would you bring a baby camping?
Isaac, he was giving a shit that night about having him there.
He was giving you shit about having who there?
My son.
He was giving you shit about having Dior there?
Yeah, he made like a disgusted noise. He didn't want to hear my son cry. He made the comment of, I don't know why you want to bring a child up here. I remember looking at him and kind of giving him a look like I've had enough. Shut your mouth.
I noticed his tone in his voice being kind of like he didn't want to be around kids.
And eventually everyone went to bed.
Jessica and Vernal and the baby slept in the back of the Suburban that was Bob's. There was a mattress back there.
They woke up the next morning and there was a knock on their window.
I heard wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey, and it was Isaac waking us up. I was a little irritated, honestly. I was like, who is this guy just randomly waking me up? I made breakfast, we all sat down and ate.
At about 10 o'clock in the morning, Jessica told Vernal that she needed to go get feminine products because she had started her period.
When I realized I was on my period, I went back to the campfire and I told Dior, I need to go to the store. I just started my period and I don't have anything. We have to go back to the store today, now.
This is when the timeline gets really hazy.
And it's at this store that little Dior's mom says she notices someone.
Somebody was saying that they seen this guy in Lador looking at the kid.
I would look over and he would be staring at little man. No expression on his face.
And attention is starting to focus on those at the campsite.
In any case like this, you're going to have to look at the 4 people that were there.
Do you trust Isaac?
But for what?
Would you trust him to watch your grandson?
No.
Do you trust him to not steal your money?
No.
Why are you friends with him? If you don't trust him, why would you?
Well, you know what? That's a hell of a question.
They're trying to mislead us into this being this perfect little partridge family when they're anything but that.
So we all probably got a different story. You better shut up before you get in trouble here.
What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Ledor, just outside of Ledor.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
2-year-old Dior Coons has just disappeared while camping with his family.
How long has he been missing?
About
an hour?
Yeah.
Do you know which campground you're in?
It's Stone Reservoir, Timber Creek.
There were 4 individuals up on the top of the mountain, along with the baby Dior.
On this camping trip, where Dior's parents, Vernal Coons and Jessica Mitchell, along with Dior's great-grandfather, Bob Walton, Grandpa Bob had also brought a friend, Isaac Renwand.
What do you remember what happened up there?
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you remember the last time you saw little Dior?
No comment.
Okay, but he was up there.
Yes, that he was.
The campsite starts here, in which they made a semicircle around. They had the camper attached onto the truck, and they had Isaac's little camp spot right in this area right here. We had a tent set up, and then they had the Suburban set over here. So it was kind of like a semicircle with the picnic bench being used, and this was the fire pit.
For little Dior's family, the day began normally, until around 10 a.m., when Dior's mom says she noticed she had started her period.
She went back to the camp and she told Vernal, I have to go to town. I started my period. I need tampons.
But the only store in the area, more than a 30-minute drive from the Timber Creek campground, the Stage Stop in Ledor, Idaho. Jessica and Vernal say they loaded little Dior into the family's truck and began the journey back into town. But at the Stage Stop, Jessica says she notices something.
That's when Jessica goes into, oh, there was a guy sitting at the booth right there to the right staring at us. He gave me the creeps.
Jessica said that there was a creepy-looking man looking at Dior.
I noticed there was an older guy in the corner booth table in the front of the store. He was just sitting there drinking coffee, but I would look over and he would be staring at little man. No expression on his face. Every time I would look at him, he would look down and put his coffee cup up to his lips.
They said after they got their candy and their food from the stage stop that they headed back up the mountain.
Now, depending upon whose story you listen to, they're going to go this way to what they call the big tree. They start walking. They say, Bob, can you watch little Dior? According to who you talk to, Vernal or Jessica, Bob says, yeah, don't worry about it. Leave him here.
I asked my grandpa if he could watch little man while me and Dior walked up to go check out the creek, see if I could catch anything. My grandpa said, yeah, that's fine.
They start walking this way, and little Dior, depending upon whose testimony you listen to, runs after them.
We started walking off. Little Dior had noticed, and we made it 15, 20 feet. Jessica turned around, I turned around, and there he was, walking after us. And I looked at him, I said, are you coming with, or are you going to stay here with Grandpa Bob?
He said, no, yeah, and turned around and walked back towards my grandpa.
And they said the grandpa held up a Snicker bar and said he had candy.
Bob says, I got candy at a little mini Snickers bar.
My understanding is you offered him some candy, is that right?
Good as that.
They said Isaac took him to the creek and he said, I caught fish there, I caught fish there, I caught fish there.
Eventually, little Dior's dad goes back to the campground, only to discover his son is missing. Dior's mom claims she heard Vernal yelling from the creek.
I heard Dior yell, and I couldn't understand what he said. And I asked him what, and he said, little man's gone, he's missing, we can't find him.
I'm from Texas, and let me tell you really kind of straight. There's no way you can hear anything down there with those two brooks going like they are. No way. No how.
Do you remember Jessica asking you to watch him?
No, I don't. That's what I heard her say that. But I don't remember that, but I was watching him anyway, you know.
Why do you take a man who's got COPD on oxygen to a high level elevation where the oxygen air is thin anyway? The whole trip was odd to me. But
So I don't know what happened. That's all there is to it. But he was gone.
I will never forgive Bob for letting my son get out of sight. I will never forgive him.
how do you feel about your grandpa?
I feel like he's putting a lot of this on himself, and it's hurting his health pretty bad. I think he feels guilty about it.
Do you feel any guilt at all? Do you feel any anger or upset over what happened?
No. I'm upset about it.
But you don't feel any guilt over it?
No.
He loved little man to death. He always talked about how good of a kid he was.
What was your relationship with baby Dior? Were you close to him?
Not really.
Or were you like affectionate with the baby? Or
No, I don't pick kids up and stuff like that.
Okay.
Give them the kisses like the women? No, sir.
Do I think Jessica did anything? No, because she was there with me.
If it's my grandpa, that's guilty. I don't care. Like, I just want my son back. He's 2. I would give up my life just to bring him back, to know that he is safe.
You're the mother of Dior. You deserve to know that when Philip sat here and got in his face and asked him some pretty tough questions, he peed on the chair. But yet he doesn't know anything.
Do you want to know why he peed? Because he knows I know. He knows I know.
Where's your restroom? I gotta tell you to leave.
Okay, very good. Let's take a break. Caroline, why don't you show him real quick?
He got up, we were going to take a break, and his chair was wet.
Grandpa had no reason to kill that child. Jessica had no reason to kill that child.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of your son?
Vernal had no reason to kill that child.
Did you have anything to do with this?
Hell no. That little boy is everything to me.
But the private investigator hired by Dior's family and the police are about to come to a stunning conclusion.
We just beg everybody to please keep your eyes open.
I hope that he's okay, and in my mind, that's what keeps me going, that he's okay.
This is Ladore, Idaho. It is a very, very rural and small town. They are a camping area. There are people that come in, and camping's real big in Idaho. And that's important to this community because that's where people make their money, off of camping supplies, diesel, kerosene, things that you use up in the mountains up here.
It's where 2-year-old Dior Kuhn's family decided to go camping. But the very next day, Dior is gone.
Dior disappears. Everyone's hoping that there'll be some sort of break within 2 or 3 weeks, but nothing happens. Nobody's arrested, the little boy isn't found, and weeks go by.
We had some pretty serious concerns from the get-go on the case that, you had 4 people on top of a mountain. You had a mother, you had a father, you had a grandfather, and then you had what we call the anomaly, which is Isaac. I think the answer is up there somewhere. The answer is definitely up there somewhere.
But that answer has so far managed to elude authorities.
Do you think that Dior could have had anything to do with it?
Absolutely not. Okay. No, he was with me the whole time.
Do you think there's a chance that Jessica could be involved in this?
I don't think so. I have toyed with that in my head.
Do you trust Jessica 100%?
When it comes to my son, I did. When it comes to, any life decision, no.
Do you think Jessica hurt him?
I don't think Jessica hurt him.
Do you think his daddy hurt him?
I don't think so.
One of the few leads in the case, a mysterious man at the only store in town.
They had actually gone down to the little store in town that morning, and Jessica said that there was a creepy-looking man looking at Dior.
All the investigators, including Lemhi County, we all go find this guy. He's like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. Yeah, I go in there every day for coffee. I sit there for a little bit, and then I go home.
We actually had him do a sketch artist, and one of the deputies was pretty sure, I think I know this guy, but eventually we figured out who he was, and that was kind of the end of that.
You cannot see,
including that tree that's down.
Including that tree that's down.
Although the private investigator on the case, Philip Klein, believes he has at least some idea of what happened.
Number 1, there was not an animal that took the child. Number 2, there was no forced abduction. So that leaves us with one last possible theory, that the child could have died up on the mountain either accidentally or possibly with intent. We do not believe Dior Kuhns is alive.
This is a small town. We're dealing with a missing child who may have been killed, who something nefarious may have happened. Things like this don't happen here.
Shortly after Klein releases his findings, the sheriff at the time, Lynn Bowerman, makes a stunning move, naming Dior Kuhn's parents suspects.
The parents of missing toddler Dior Kuhns Jr. are now suspects in his disappearance. The Lemhi County Sheriff says they are at the top of his list.
Basically, I was saying they were the top persons of interest, but, actually, yeah, I believe they're suspects.
It's a move not everyone working on the case agrees on.
I think suspect was a little strong. Consider them uncleared people of interest.
I felt it was necessary to come forward and say that the parents are being less than truthful. Things that should be important to them, important in their memory, have changed from who made the decision to do what, or who cooked that morning, or who took a fishing pole down to the creek. Just minor changes like that, constantly changing.
The focus of the investigation is steering toward the parents.
I believe so.
What do you think happened?
I have no clue. Absolutely no clue.
But by summer 2016, nearly 1 year after Dior Coons disappeared, Sheriff Bowerman seems to have an idea. And his suspicions are starting to sound a lot like Philip Klein's.
I'm moving more and more towards it being a homicide, strictly because we've ruled out the abduction, we've ruled out wild animals. The fact that we have no credible witness at this time that can clearly state he was at the scene, not only am I not believing he was ever there, but I'm believing we have a homicide.
The questions arose, was baby Dior even at the campsite?
It's been 8 months since rescue crews first began searching for missing toddler Dior Coons Jr. Tonight, for the first time since his parents were named suspects, Jessica Mitchell and Vernal Coons are answering the questions you want to know.
Did you murder your son?
Absolutely not.
No. Was there an accident?
No. If there was, it wasn't of my knowledge.
Exactly. We have no knowledge of that. There was.
You're saying you have nothing to do with his disappearance?
No.
No.
He was left with a trusted adult. When I come back, my son was gone.
They had an interview with one of the local stations. There's the aired version and then there's the uncut version.
Private investigators have obtained that uncut version.
As long as you promise me that no uncut, unedited crap ends up out there.
And they've released portions of it to the public.
He just had this personality, like he just lit up an entire room. His laugh, his just the way that he did
Hold on
everything.
SD card, can I have your 620?
I just don't say had.
Yeah, let's pause.
You can't do that.
He's coaching her. I don't know why he would be coaching her. And typically speaking, when you refer to a child in past tense, that parent, it's a subconscious thing. They know in their mind the child's not coming back.
Since he disappeared, there has been no trace of the missing toddler. And everyone from police to local citizens have theorized about what may have happened. But one theory stands out.
There's also the theory that he was never even up there in the first place.
Aside from the 4 people that were here, do you have any witnesses that saw Dior around that time?
There's a couple people in town that they're not 100% sure, but they think they saw him when they made their trip to town.
The only witnesses who can definitely say Dior was on the trip are his parents, his great-grandfather, and Isaac.
Sheriff Penner has said that he believes the child was up there at the campsite, and he has no reason to believe otherwise.
I'm fairly confident that Dior was there. I can't find anybody that says they're 100% positive he was there. But I feel fairly confident he was there at one time.
Making matters more complicated, there's no surveillance video at all.
I'd be surprised if there's a camera anywhere in Leavenworth. It's a real small community.
As police search for answers, something shocking is about to happen with Grandpa Bob.
It's been over 4 years now since Dior disappeared. There have been no arrests. The body has not been found. There are still so many questions that remain about this case.
Of the 4 people here, no one is clear.
That's fair to say, I think.
It was so taxing on Jessica and Vernal that they split up, and Jessica has remarried. Vernal has dated a few people here and there. He continues to drive trucks out of Idaho. Isaac continues to live at his same house, continues to fish, continues to ride his bike.
You don't want to carry this situation to your grave. Look at me. You know you don't want this to go to your grave.
Right.
Don't you?
Do I know it?
Mm-hmm.
Sure I do. I want to get it solved. I don't want to be messing with it.
Nearly 4 years after Dior disappeared, Grandpa Bob passes away.
A lot of people wondered if he took his knowledge to the grave with him. We may never know.
I don't think Bob killed the child. I don't think Bob had anything to do with killing the child, but I do think Bob had more information than he revealed.
There were only 3 people currently alive that were there at the campground when the child went missing. Isaac Renwant, Jessica, and Vernal. The only way that they can clear them is by finding the child.
Although both the private eye and the sheriff at the time believes Isaac has been the most truthful person there that day.
In our opinion, Isaac, the third person up here, is the only person that has kept his story straight, the only person that tells the same story, and the only person that'll sit there and look you in the eyes and go, I don't know. And I believe he doesn't know.
He's probably been more consistent on his story from the very beginning, you know. I mean, we haven't seen any of the big discrepancies with him.
Philip Klein has withdrawn from the case.
I honestly don't think that we will ever know what really happened to him. I really don't.
We love to sit around and talk about how rough and tough we are as investigators. This is a case that haunts me. My team's been ridiculed. My team has been beat down. We did a damn good job on this case. I don't know what direction this case can go now without a body. I hope that whoever comes into this case from this point further can solve this case for the town of Ladore, for extended family members of the Kuntz family and Jessica's family.
It's such a beautiful place, and now it's such a haunted place to me. July 10th, it'll just be a day that's just haunting the rest of our life.
Is still missing. If you have any information, please call 1-800-843-5678 or 208-756-8980.
Là mình đã vừa hướng dẫn các bạn cách vẽ cũng như là tô màu bức tranh hình bông hoa sen này, thì video của mình đến đây cũng là kết thúc rồi. Xin chào tạm biệt và hẹn gặp lại các bạn ở những video tiếp theo nha. Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn. Hôm nay mình sẽ hướng dẫn các bạn cách vẽ và tô màu bức tranh hình 2 quả dâu nha. Thì ở đây mình đã chuẩn bị một bức tranh có hình 2 quả dâu tây này. Các bạn có thể quan sát. Thì ở đây người ta đã vẽ sẵn cho mình rồi, nhưng mà người ta mới chỉ vẽ bằng các cái nét đứt, nên là trông nó chưa được hoàn chỉnh, đúng không? Thì mình sẽ sử dụng ở đây là một chiếc bút mà mình có. Sau đó mình sẽ nối liền các cái nét đứt này lại với nhau, sao cho thành hình 2 quả dâu nha. Và sau khi mà nối xong thì mình sẽ sử dụng một hộp màu. Ở đây mình đã chuẩn bị một hộp màu sáp gồm 24 màu. Mặc dù cái màu mình hơi bị gãy một chút đi, nhưng mà tô vẫn ok nha. Các bạn cũng có thể thay thế cái hộp màu sáp của mình bằng màu dầu này, hoặc là màu chì, thì ra kết quả cũng đẹp tương tự nha. Thì mình sẽ bắt đầu thực hiện cái bước đầu tiên, đó chính là sử dụng một chiếc bút để nối liền các cái nét đứt này. Mình sẽ bắt đầu từ quả dâu bên tay trái của mình trước nhé. Mình sẽ bắt đầu nối từ cái cuống này. Sau đó là đến cái phần lá ở trên đỉnh của quả dâu nhé. Tiếp theo mình sẽ viền xuống cái phần bên ngoài cùng này của quả dâu này để cho nó định hình thành một quả dâu ấy. Ok, mình sẽ tiếp tục chuyển sang là vẽ cái phần hạt của cái quả dâu tây này nhé. Mình đã vẽ xong một cái quả dâu rồi nha. Mình sẽ chuyển sang quả dâu thứ hai nằm ở phía bên tay phải này nhé.